Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, Supporting Wyoming Energy Communities. My name is Briggs White. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Interagency Working Group on Coal, Power Plant Communities, and Economic Revitalization. And welcome to today's webinar. Before we get started, I want to say a few thank yous and provide a little bit of context. First of all, thank you to the Wyoming Governor's Office. They've been incredibly helpful in terms of helping us meet a lot of folks across the state, including communities that we've had the opportunity to learn and listen from. We met with 4 different communities across Wyoming, and thank you to those mayors, county commissioners, and others that gave us the opportunity to sit as federal representatives from across the different agencies that make up the Interagency Working Group, and just listen and learn and think about ways that we can be most helpful in today's event, but also moving forward after this event, because we don't want this to be the last time we engage. And so again, thank you for that opportunity. And I just want to really double down on the fact that we have been brainstorming ways that we can be most impactful. I want to thank all of the stakeholders in the run-up to this event that provided input in terms of what their topics were that were most of interest, as well as what federal agencies they'd like to hear from on today's panel. And in fact, we have additional agencies in the audience that can answer your questions if the agency representatives aren't on the official agenda. So with that, I just want to say, we're really looking forward to taking action even beyond today's event. A couple of quick examples. You may not think of the EPA in terms of economic development, but they have technical assistance that can be used immediately right out of the gate if you're ready to engage for economic revitalization and underutilized development. The USDA has an extensive ground game of field staff through the Rural Development Organization. You're going to hear a little bit about USDA today. And they're ready to work with you right now as a partner. Department of Commerce through EDA's program. They're ready to work with Wyoming. And I know there was a bit of disappointment around the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, but I'm 100% certain that they're ready to work with those applicants that maybe weren't selected to move forward, to find other ways that those proposals can move forward or those project ideas. And the list goes on. Department of Energy, significant opportunities, particularly moving forward with the enactment of the infrastructure bill, and lots of opportunities related to carbon, hydrogen, and other things that we're going to talk about more today. So with that, why don't we roll into our next slide and learn a little bit more about who we have on today's call. So if you would, there's going to be a poll that's going to come up. This is entirely optional, but just for a little bit of level setting on who do we have on the call, we invited a broad cross-section of Wyoming stakeholders, as well as our 11 federal agencies, as well as other agency partners to attend today's meeting. And let's find out a little bit more about who we have in the audience, particularly from the Wyoming community. So if you would do that, please go ahead and indicate in the poll where you're from. And why don't we bring up some of the other slides to go over the agenda. So after this brief logistical overview, we'll have an introduction by Randall Luthi, the Chief Energy Advisor of the Office of Governor Mark Gordon. Then we'll have some opening remarks. First by Brian Anderson, the Executive Director of the Interagency Working Group, who will provide an overview of the IWG, as well as a video by the Governor Mark Gordon himself. So we'll get to hear a little bit more. And then we're going to get a pretty extensive Wyoming state panel. First, we'll have some experts that'll provide some different topical perspectives, and then we'll hear from 4 communities and get those communities, those voices from those communities, and do a little bit of learning. Next slide, please. And then we will have time for Q&A. Mary Throne, a Public Service Commissioner in the state of Wyoming, will facilitate a question and answer around that panel. Then we will go into a panel of federal experts. We'll hear from the Department of Energy. We'll hear from EDA, EPA, Agriculture, Interior, and Labor. And these were, again, the federal agencies that Wyoming stakeholders said they wanted to hear from most. We'll have a Q&A, and I'll facilitate that. And then we'll round out this opening plenary session with some closing remarks. But just keep in mind there are some afternoon breakout sessions. Those are entirely optional, but we'll have 2 of those running in parallel, one focused on workers and one focused on carbon-related opportunities. So feel free to jump in if you'd like to and attend either or both of those if you can. So with that, just a few housekeeping reminders. All attendees are muted. Feel free to provide input to the panelists with the chat function. This is being recorded, and we will send out copies of the slides and a link to the recording to anyone that registered for this event, whether they were able to attend or not. So they will receive an email follow-up in a handful of business days after the event is over. And I think we just covered that. Those will also be posted on our website, energycommunities.gov. So with that, I think we're going to transition to our co-host from the Wyoming Governor's Office. Randall Luthi, would you like to share a few words and perspectives with our audience?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So first of all, good morning. And it really is my pleasure to welcome you to the Wyoming Coal Communities Workshop. Thank you for taking the time to participate. Your willingness to take most of this Friday, just before we enter the holiday season, I think really underscores the importance of coal communities to Wyoming. You know, Wyoming is well represented here today, from our neighbors next door to community and county leaders to state agency officials. And we will have the opportunity to share our vision, not only of what we think our community should be, but also the vision of what our state should be. Clearly, as you looked at the agenda, it's clear that this meeting just did not happen overnight. And many of you have participated in numerous planning sessions and have spent hours preparing community-based presentations. This includes mayors, county commissioners, interested citizens, and heads of state agencies. Once more, thank you for those efforts. You know, scheduling and details is what makes an effort like this succeed. So in particular, I recognize and thank Director Robin Cooley, Wyoming Public Service Commissioner Mary Throne, School of Energy Resources Director Holly Kretka, Wyoming Energy Authority Director Glenn Murrell, and our Get It Done Coordinator, Drew Bauer. On the federal side, thank you to Briggs White and his team for coordinating all the federal officials. We are here today because Wyoming is an energy producing state. We are the largest energy exporting state in the nation. Approximately 80% of the energy produced in Wyoming is delivered to consumers across much of the nation. We have a broad energy portfolio. It includes wind, solar, coal, oil, gas, and uranium. It is our belief that an all the above energy promotes energy reliability and energy security. And we are proud to do so. As we go in today's discussions, we cannot adequately plan for the future without respecting our past and our current situation. So just a little reminder for our federal participants. Wyoming is the top coal producing state. We have almost 40% of all the coal mines in the United States. We have 10 coal fields and 6 of the largest coal mines in the nation. Over 5,000 jobs are directly tied to the coal community. The average wage of the Wyoming coal miner is over $93,000 per year, excluding benefits. That is almost twice the statewide average. Economic studies show that each coal industry position supports 2 additional jobs in the community. So when you add it all up, that means over 15,000 Wyoming workers and their families are tied to coal. We recognize the importance of coal and coal communities, even if EDA didn't earlier this week. Now, we know the past is not prologue, but that does give you some understanding of why we are so dedicated to keeping those workers in our communities as the future of coal markets change. So what does any of this have to do with today? For the Wyoming participants, it means here's a chance to tell our story, a chance to share how we want our transformation to work. We do believe that coal should be a part of our future. CO2 capture on coal-fired plants is a part of our recommended solution. Existing coal industry infrastructure should be used to encourage new industry to our coal communities. We are just beginning to explore the possibilities of producing our rare earth elements and critical minerals. Coal can and should be more than just a fuel. We are committed to keeping our communities vibrant, strong, and supplying energy and other resources for the future. Now, for our federal friends, approximately 48% of Wyoming is federally controlled. Approximately 67% of the mineral estate, and that does include oil and gas, is federally managed. The federal government is our largest and closest neighbor. And like all neighbors, sometimes that relationship is strained. Many in Wyoming are cautious about what the federal government can do for us and to us. So today is an opportunity to open communication channels, to set the ground rules and find out what is and is not possible. You know, we are hearing a lot about federal money and a lot about federal programs. It's going to help our coal communities. But frankly, if the federal strings don't match what our communities know what they need and what they want to do, all the money in the world is not going to deliver any results. You know, in terms of relationships, I think this meeting is similar to a first date. You know, we've had a lot of casual conversation, you know, a lot of touching out and trying to get an idea of what each party is interested in. But I suggest that we actually treat it more like the first joint trip. Let's decide who's going to bring what are the boundaries, and where we want to go. So again, thank you. Enough of me. Governor Gordon's going to give us some further suggestions. So let's hunker down and let's see what we can get done today. Thank you.
Thank you, Randall. And again, thank you for your partnership. It's been great working with you over the last few weeks, and look forward, more importantly, to working together with Wyoming moving forward. And with that, let me introduce Brian Anderson. He'll be our next speaker. And Brian, as the Executive Director of the Interagency Working Group, you provide leadership. And I also wanted to point out that Brian is the Director of the National Energy Technology Laboratory, which, Brian, you know the statistic better, but over 100 years of work in fossil energy and other topics that are absolutely relevant to what Randall just shared with us. So why don't you take it away and give us a little bit of an overview and update?
Well, I really appreciate the introduction, Briggs and Randall. Thank you so much for your comments. And I love the first road trip analogy. I think that you know, we are deciding together where we're going. I think that one of the key premises of the Interagency Working Group, and it is a core priority for us, is that we want to work with communities. This is not a federal government agency. We're not an agency. We're a collection of agencies all driving toward a mission, and that mission is how to ensure that all of our communities around the country, in particular our energy communities like the coal and power plant communities across Wyoming, how we can ensure that we have the most rich, most diverse economies that are resilient and are continuing to contribute to our nation's energy future. And so with that, as Greg said, I'm not only the Interagency Working Group on Coal and Power Plant Communities and Economic Revitalization Executive Director, but I'm the Director of the National Energy Technology Laboratory. Many of you in the state of Wyoming have worked with NETL over the years. As Greg said, it's actually 111 years, soon will be 112th year of working on fossil energy technology from our initiation back in 1910 on trying to solve some of the issues that were plaguing the underground mining communities in 1908 and 1909 with the spate of mine explosions, all the way through how we utilize our coal resources to create synthetic fuels following the Second World War, And over the last 25 years, we have been spearheading the nation's effort on developing carbon capture and sequestration technologies, and certainly lots and lots of partnerships across the state of Wyoming. And so the top line message that we have is that this is a charge for the interagency working group from the president in an executive order that was signed in January. And this was for us to ensure that no communities are left behind, and that we have the most rich economic future for our energy communities that we know have supported our nation's economy, our nation's thriving economy for the last 100 years. And so what we did in the very first stages per the executive order was identified 25 priority communities, and certainly the communities in Wyoming. As Randall had mentioned, Wyoming is the number one coal producing state, and you know that in Wyoming. So certainly across the state is a priority for the IWG to engage directly with these coal communities. As you know, some communities are immediately challenged, some are facing challenges with pending power plant closures, and we're continuing the analysis because we know that it's not only the jobs that are created by the coal industry and coal conversion to power, but it's the tax base. And we've heard that loud and clear from communities in Wyoming. And so Wyoming's home to 2 of the top 10 priority energy communities, in fact, that was identified in that initial report. And the initial report was really to try to ensure that we're going into communities around the country that are most impacted or stand to be most impacted during a transformation of our energy economy. So we go to the next slide. We're talking about, as Randall mentioned, investments, and we hear you loud and clear. It's how we can make the investments mean something to the communities around the country. So our focus is on infrastructure, how we can upgrade or enhance the existing infrastructure and leverage the types of infrastructure that's already existing. And certainly I'm going to highlight a couple opportunities there. How we can clean up the environmental legacy or damage that we have from the past, but do it in a way that employs local employees and drives toward how to leverage the infrastructure toward a diverse economic future. We want to make sure we're promoting entrepreneurship. The individuals and small businesses that drive innovation around our country are really the backbone of our thriving economy of today and tomorrow, and how we can support community development, financial institutions, nonprofits, innovation hubs around the country, and then lastly, how we can support our workers in workforce development, so we can create robust set of jobs, but also provide the types of training programs that can align the workforces with the industry growth in key regions. So as we go to the next slide, specifically focus on that investment portion. We did identify, we have identified originally about $38 billion of existing funding. Now there's about $45 billion in potential funding available to energy communities. Right now we've already awarded across the interagency working group agencies, which are 11 agencies, certainly not only the Department of Energy and EPA that have been mentioned, the Department of Interior, a huge partner to the state of Wyoming, as Randall had mentioned, the footprint of the federal government, and agencies like Health and Human Services, Education, Labor, Department of Commerce, certainly with their EDA funding. And there's been over nearly $3 billion that have made their way out the door into communities. But our focus is not just to spend money. Our focus is not to spend money and spread it like peanut butter, but it is to focus and target the types of investments that go hand in hand with the plans that communities have in the future. And if we go to the next slide, we'll highlight some of the specific investment opportunities across the $45 billion. And I'm going to speak directly to the EDA coal communities commitment. Now, certainly it is disappointing that none of the proposals were selected from the state of Wyoming. However, we'll tell you this is not the last opportunity. And when we think of the specific opportunities with the Build Back Better challenge, it receives concept papers or concept proposals from 529 communities across the country. There's incredible demand, and we're only able to award grants to about 11% of the applications. That being said, the ideas that were not selected in the Phase 1 proposals, like the ones from Wyoming, are very promising and are eligible for funding through the EDA's other programs, like the Economic Adjustment Assistance Program funding, and I know we'll talk to this later today, and there's $200 million that are dedicated to coal communities there. EDA is not going to have separate debriefs with individual applications that weren't selected for Phase 1, but if non-selected applicants decide to develop a project within the Build Back Better proposal for a different EDA program, then we want them to reach out to EDA staff when that project application is in development. There's a real opportunity and a commitment. I was with the Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimundo, earlier this week, and the level of commitment from Department of Commerce to ensure that these very, very exciting proposals that didn't have an opportunity to be selected have a path forward to see the right types of funds be matched. And we're going to find all of those opportunities. So the IWG, that's a commitment. It's a commitment from the Department of Commerce and our other agencies. But right now, some of those other opportunities are everything in EPA brownfields, the DOE Carbon Capture Loan Program Office. I'll mention the Carbon Capture Program, and 75 other investment opportunities, 20 of which don't require matching funds, which we know for communities that are looking for a path forward in economic revitalization, this is a problem. And we also know that the infrastructure bill, the infrastructure law, will bring more funding to energy communities. So we go to the next slide. Certainly as the National Energy Technology Laboratory Director, I'm really excited to talk about some fossil energy funding that was announced this morning at 10 a.m. It was a funding to the University of Wyoming for developing net zero pathways, including hydrogen. This funding to the University of Wyoming. Congratulations. I heard Holly Kirk is on here. Congratulations to you and the team for this. It's really exciting to see how we can work together and deploy net zero energy technologies across Wyoming. And then also some other exciting announcements that have occurred over the last month or so, like TerraPower taking existing infrastructure and investing a lot of money into creating their first of a kind atrium reactor in Campbell. I had a conversation earlier this week again with the CEO of TerraPower and how they are committed to partnering with Campbell, with the communities, to see that this is a joint effort to assist in revitalizing the economies of the communities. When we go to the next slide, we've highlighted our carbon capture program, and this is because the state of Wyoming, University of Wyoming, and Wyoming private sector entities like Ramaco Carbon have been in collaboration and in partnership with the Department of Energy and with NATL and the Office of Fossil Energy for many, many years, and it's very exciting. Everything from carbon ore processing to provide value-added new products from coal to our carbon capture program. And so we have many programs with, say, Ramaco Carbon in the carbon product space, including carbon fibers and some really interesting processing technologies. There's also in partnership with the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign to use coal to manufacture a new type of computer memory chip that is faster and reduces energy speeds and is made from coal, in fact, from Wyoming coal. And so we have a real integrated approach on how we're going to scale up and move to commercial scale carbon capture and carbon storage, very much accelerated by the infrastructure bill and the carbon capture and carbon storage hubs that are going to be deployed over the next 5 years under that infrastructure bill. And so certainly with all of the expertise and interest across the state of Wyoming, we know we're going to be partnering on carbon capture, carbon storage, carbon materials, and hydrogen over the coming years. And so we go to the next slide, a little more on the carbon storage program. As many of you may know, we have regional partnerships spanning the country, including the Plain CO2 partnership out of the EERC in North Dakota, and partners all across the state of Wyoming for understanding the potential for CO2 sequestration in the subsurface. And so we greatly value all of these partnerships. Moving on, because you don't want to hear me talk, we want to get to the Wyoming panel, and I want to hear about communities in Wyoming. And I want to make sure that this is, just as Randall said, this is the beginning of a road trip, and we hope that we continue to travel a lot more. So what we want to make sure we're doing is making all the types of connections, including I wanted to give you an update on we have a website where you can find a clearinghouse that was just announced this week for all of those funding opportunities across the agencies, across the IWG agencies. It's at energycommunities.gov/funding is where the clearinghouse is. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, because we want to continue this conversation long beyond today. We'll find the right music on the radio. We'll sing along, and we'll have lots of conversation on this road trip. And so with that, the next is a call to action. Again, this is not intended to be a fly-in. This is intended to be creating our relationships so we can continue to build coalitions, find the matching funds that are necessary on some funding opportunities, make sure that we're engaged with stakeholders. So we hear from you the way that the federal government is doing things wrong. We want to hear that, because we are committed to finding the right types of not just investments, but partnerships to make sure that communities have that economic revitalization future during the transformation of our energy system. So we want input on our work streams and stakeholder engagement on how we can target the federal investments, how we can assist with building capacity in communities and creating a one-stop shop on the federal government, like the clearinghouse is our first step, our first major step on creating that one-stop shop. So with that, I'm really happy to be here today. I'm going to be able to stick around through the Wyoming panel, because I want to hear about the situation in the state of Wyoming, and I'm really happy to introduce your Wyoming governor, Mark Gordon. Although he couldn't be here with us today, really excited to share a video message from him. Most of you are familiar with the governor's background. He served as a state treasurer. He's been sworn in as the governor in 2019. He's the 33rd governor of the state of Wyoming. As state treasurer, he was ranked in 2013 as 57th among sovereign wealth fund institutes as the most significant and impactful public investor executives. He knows how to invest resources wisely in the state, and he was elected to his current position in 2018 and has been spearheading some efforts to diversify sectors of Wyoming's economy, from technology and finance and agriculture and research to education, tourism, and energy. And it's really been great to partner with the Wyoming governor's team, like Randall and others, over the last few months to put this together.
Good morning. I'm Mark Gordon, and honored to be governor of Wyoming. Whatever happens in energy, Wyoming will be part of that solution. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to this statewide Wyoming Coal Communities meeting. Today offers us a great opportunity to communicate to federal officials what's important as we continue to expand our energy potential. My first thank you is to all those around the state for agreeing to listen and, more importantly, provide direction and feedback to Washington, D.C. I am proud to see that you have turned out in force and have such a broad representation of Wyoming. We've never been a one-size-fits-all state. Yes, we have several counties and communities with coal and fossil fuel-based economies, but their needs and circumstances are as varied as our landscape. To our federal participants, you also represent a broad swath of federal agencies. Thank you for your preparation and time. I know Secretary Granholm's very interested in this process, and I thank her for directing this endeavor. I have to say it's frustrating to have recently learned that Wyoming was left out of the list of finalists for the administration's Coal Communities Commitment. Wyoming is dedicated to supporting our coal communities, even if the EDA is not. Your participation in today's workshop does not signal that Wyoming has given up on coal. Nothing could be further from the truth. Your participation shows you are committed to improving our economy, improving our environment, and looking for broad-based solutions to our climate and our energy future. Wyoming has been providing energy to much of the nation for over a century. Wyoming is the nation's leader in coal production and will continue to be so for the foreseeable future. Our Powder River Basin still provides about 40% of the nation's coal to 27 states. There has not been a school built in our state for over 20 years that didn't use money from coal. Coal has funded our K-12 school system. Thousands of jobs are directly and indirectly tied to coal. We do not have a blind eye towards our future. Indeed, due to the CO2 concerns, the use of coal to produce electricity is expected to continue to decline. However, the Energy Information Administration predicts coal will still produce over 11% of our nation's electricity in 2050. And just think about what opportunities we could have to do a better job of burning that coal. Wyoming's coal is low in sulfur and also delivers environmental benefits consistent with emissions control under the Clean Air Act. Wyoming can produce low-cost coal, and we have a lot of coal to produce. Burning coal isn't the issue. The release of CO2 into the atmosphere, well, that is the target to which we should be aiming. It is my hope that today's discussion will include serious conversations about how low CO2 emissions can keep coal in the energy mix, and other beneficial uses for coal and other fossil fuels can be considered as well. This gathering can help shape our future. Unfortunately, most of the results of coal transition in other states has actually resulted in the translocation of coal miners and utility workers out of their home communities. That's not Wyoming's transformational goal. To our Wyoming participants, you have never been shy about telling me what's important, and I trust that will continue today. As this day moves forward, I trust you will emphasize that any change in the use of coal and fossil fuels must benefit your community and our country. Explore what it will take to increase our manufacturing base. Let's talk about having wind turbine and blade manufacturers in our coal communities. How about wings for new planes? Let's talk about the potential of supplying critical materials and essential elements to consumers across the globe. Talk about what it would take to build a coal refinery to produce a new generation of construction materials. Let's talk about the potential of nuclear plants, or the importance of having an all-of-the-above energy strategy. Let's talk about that broad-based energy supply is so important to grid stability. And let's talk about what hydrogen production can do for our communities. To our federal friends, just tell us what you can or cannot do. Be helpful. Be willing to consider alternate solutions, ones that can keep industry and our communities thriving. Be open to a Wyoming way to succeed. Again, thank you for being part of today. Do not hesitate to let me know your impressions of today's conversation. And thank you very much.
Thank you to the governor and to all who are engaged in this conversation. And I think that our ears are on, and we want to listen to this conversation. And I'll pass it back to Briggs and introduce Mary. Thank you very much for leading this panel.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you to the governor. Very helpful opening remarks. And before I introduce Mary, folks in the audience, we have a question that can hopefully inform the balance of the day and even beyond. So if you'd be willing to engage in that poll, we'd appreciate it. The question is, what's the top challenge your organization faces to accessing federal funds, grant writing support, matching funds, identifying the funding opportunities themselves, getting answers to questions, or anything else? And feel free to drop it in the chat. And now I'd like to introduce Mary Throne from the Wyoming Public Service Commission. And Mary, would you please maybe introduce our panelists while folks are filling out this poll, and then we'll see the results.
Thank you, Briggs, and thank you to everybody for participating today. It's my pleasure to introduce the Wyoming panel. of state and local representatives. We have Dr. Glenn Morrell, the Executive Director of Wyoming's Energy Authority, Dr. Holly Krutka, the Executive Director of the School of Energy Resources at the University of Wyoming, Dr. Kim Dale, the President of Western Wyoming Community College, Shofei Shermer with the Utility Workers Union of America, Local 127, and 4 of our distinguished county commissioners. From Campbell County, we have Commissioner Rusty Bell. From Converse County, Commissioner Jim Willix. From Lincoln County, Commissioner Bob King. And from Sweetwater County, Commissioner Lauren Schoenfeld. Look forward to the panel. And as you're listening to the panel, please think of questions that you would like to bring up in the Q&A, and you can put those in the chat later. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Morrell.
Before Dr. Morrell jumps on the screen, there we go. Could we just see the results of that poll just to close that out? See if we have the ability to do that. Here we go. So just a quick overview. It looks like identifying federal funding opportunities was first, but nearly tied with grant writing support, so pretty consistent with what we've heard. And then matching funds. For those that weren't able to answer, would encourage you throughout the day, please do use the chat function. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, why don't we turn it back over to Dr. Morrell. Thank you.
Thank you, Briggs, and thank you, Mary, for the introduction. First of all, I want to just thank the IWG for being so willing to come and talk to us about this. I've been having a few conversations with various people at the federal level over the last few months. Take, for example, the Office of Nuclear Energy, and I've found every engagement to be constructive, and the teams, both sides, have been looking forward to finding solutions to the challenges we face. So extend a thank you to this group for finding time to be here. So quickly, introductory comment. I'm Glenn Morrell. I'm the Executive Director of the Energy Authority. The Energy Authority is, in many ways, simply the strategic hub of a lot of the public activities and sometimes private activities for the energy sector within Wyoming. And we spend most of our time coordinating activities across all the different state agencies and making sure that everybody's pulling on the same rope at the same time. One of those requirements of that work is that we administer and deliver the Wyoming Energy Strategy. And the Wyoming Energy Strategy is a lot of things, but the simple primary objective of that strategy is to power the nation with all of the above and net zero energy mix. So powering the nation is something we've done for decades. We've contributed to the well-being, standard of living of literally hundreds of millions of Americans over the last 40 or 50 years, and we want to keep doing that. We are going to take an all of the above approach. We're going to let the market decide. We're not going to try and pick winners either one way or another. We want to create a level playing field for all forms of energy production to succeed and satisfy the needs of our communities and our consumers overall. Most important, though, is the net zero aspiration. We recognize that for an energy sector of Wyoming to continue to be relevant and sustainable in the future, we have to be aware of and cognizant of and respectful of the developing market demand curves and so on, and then increasing demand for net zero energy delivery. And we have embraced that aspiration and that objective, and we are confident that we'll be able to get there and pursue it. So if you wanted to capture the overall energy strategy and in terms of a vision, what we're really trying to do is to transform a more traditional energy economy in such a way that it remains relevant and sustainable in a low emissions world. So if you look at what Wyoming's energy sector is made up of, it's predominantly hydrocarbon based for sure. So with that respect, technologies like carbon capture, utilization and storage, hydrogen, advanced reactor technologies, and so on, become vitally important for the future of that energy economy. Other adjacent sort of technologies are rare earth elements, carbon engineering, things like that, become more and more important for the continuation of our coal resource, which we have obviously an incredible natural endowment of. But those are the technologies that are going to help us get there, and we're very fascinated to see some of the efforts on the federal side that are encapsulated within the infrastructure bill. There is enormous opportunity within that, as well as other bills coming out, like the reconciliation bill, should it pass. A lot of aspects of that are very, very important for Wyoming. And even the recently announced Vision for the Future bill that is just being introduced by the Barrasso and Manchin, clearly aligned with what we're trying to do at a state level. But the infrastructure bill just represents a massive opportunity, and we have to be able to find a way to pursue those in a way that we can get them executed in the state. Along those lines, though, we've come up a couple of times already this morning about the disappointment associated with the Build Back Better decisions. Yes, we were disappointed, and as one of the officers that originated one of those proposals with these pursuits. Some of the other challenges, we have already touched on a few of these things. Simply scale. We're a small state, and yet we are the third largest energy economy in the country. And that transformation is therefore that much harder for us to do. It is very, very challenging when the energy sector of Wyoming's economy is so large and so impactful to the well-being of the communities within the state. It is an enormous challenge. Director Anderson even mentioned earlier the potential for capacity. That is a massive problem for us. We are very, very small agency structure, and we're pursuing massive project competition with many neighboring states which have much more resources in terms of the simply manpower going after these things. So that's going to be an interesting conversation moving forward. And obviously the incredible community impact of this transformation, what that means for jobs and well-being and standard of living of the Wyoming energy worker and the families. So we need partnerships. The only way the Wyoming can be successful in this transformation is by partnering with private and public entities. And the federal government has to play a central role. So this group, like I said earlier, very, very happy that you're spending the time coming to talk to us. And then the constituent members of this group as well, and particularly from my perspective, the Department of Energy, which I have to say have been incredible partners already. And we look forward to exploring the opportunities and the potential to work together to transform our economy for the better. So to close, everyone, I'd just like to say once again, I'm grateful for this call very much. And I'm grateful for the calls, the many calls that we've had preceding this discussion. And I'm also grateful for the work that we're going to do together for the betterment of Wyoming and the people, the Wyomingites and the citizens of this great state. Thank you very much.
Hi, so I think I'm speaking next after Glenn. So hi, everyone. I'm Holly Krutka. I'm the Executive Director of the School of Energy Resources. And I think Dr. Morrell hit a lot of things on the head that I wanted to convey. But I would also like to thank everyone involved with organizing. These things certainly don't organize themselves, and appreciate being asked to speak. So for those who aren't familiar, the School of Energy Resources is housed at the University of Wyoming, and we collaborate across UW and across the state. We're governed by the Energy Resources Council to focus on energy-driven economic development for the state of Wyoming. And we do that through our research, academic, and outreach programs. First of all, I would like to thank the DOE, who's been both a great funder and supporting us over the years. With DOE and state support, we've been able to advance technologies over the last decade, so they're moving toward commercialization. And we're particularly excited about the opportunity that was just mentioned, that we're launching a new program, which just funded or just announced that we received funding this morning, and it'll be focused on driving a net zero energy economy in Wyoming, and specifically on hydrogen. So thank you so much to DOE for funding that. There's so many opportunities for Wyoming as we look to ensure that the coal communities, and quite frankly the entire state, is able to have a strong economy even as the energy mix changes. And I think one of the big advantages here in Wyoming is that the citizens of the state are very, very open to different energy sources, to energy development. And our feeling and our collaborators across the state, we feel that Wyoming needs to build on its strengths. So I'll talk about some of the strengths we have here as a state and what we've been doing at the School of Energy Resources to capitalize on those strengths. So, of course, it's already been mentioned, carbon capture, use, and storage, or CCUS. The state legislature has been very active in making Wyoming an ideal place to invest in this technology. We have the Wyoming Integrated Test Center, which is one of only 2 test centers for carbon capture technologies in the state. And we've done a tremendous amount of work on CO2 storage around the state. So the Rock Springs Uplift is ideal for a CO2 hub. It's truly a prolific resource in terms of CO2 storage capacity. And we've had funding historically from the Department of Energy to really understand that resource, and our estimates are that it has pore space to hold up to as much as 25 billion tons of CO2, which would be over 400 years of all Wyoming's emissions. So it is quite massive in scale, but it's only one of the many CO2 storage sites. And we're also, School of Energy Resources, leading the Wyoming Carbon Safe Project, another ideal location for a hub. As far as challenges for CCUS deployment in Wyoming, we've been working through them over the years, and I want to thank John Litinsky, who's from DOE on this call. We were on a separate call with federal stakeholders earlier this week, and I mentioned that one of our big remaining hurdles for CCUS development in Wyoming is the lack of ability to lease pore space on federal lands, and that was met with an immediate email and response, and now I think we're going to have some calls to talk with one of our legal scholars, Professor Tara Rigetti, who's one of the great minds in this field. So excited to see that moving forward and the level of responsiveness there. So moving on from CCUS, I want to also talk about carbon engineering. The state of Wyoming has spent millions of dollars on carbon engineering, which is our effort to create new products from Wyoming coal. And I do want to make a case. The Department of Energy so far has been focused on coal waste for development of carbon-derived products. Wyoming does not have coal waste like is seen in Appalachia and out east. However, we do have some real benefits with our coal. Obviously, we have prolific sources of coal, reserves of coal that are very inexpensive to mine, and they also, by DOE's own numbers, have extremely low upstream emissions relative to other coal across America, so and the world. So we do feel that even as that new mining of coal, we don't have coal waste, we don't have piles of coal sitting around, and that's partly because it's so windy in Wyoming that you would lose it. So, so we would love to be able to continue to mine that coal and use it without any emissions, so driving down all those emissions over time and using it for coal-derived products. And we are here at the School of Energy Resources focused on lots of different areas in our carbon engineering effort, but particularly large-scale applications like soil amendments, construction materials, and asphalt materials. So we very much plan to continue that work and would really love for the DOE to recognize the benefits of Wyoming coal. And even though we don't have coal waste that might be useful for those programs, to consider the attributes of Wyoming coal. I already mentioned Wyoming Wind, very prolific resource as well that we're working on. And it's been mentioned rare earths, critical minerals, and even precious metals in Wyoming are available. These materials are needed to build out renewables, to build out wind, for batteries, for energy storage, and more. Wyoming has both conventional and unconventional sources, and we're really excited to be working under the Core CM projects funded by the Department of Energy to look at those unconventional sources. And we feel that this is ideal. Wyoming is an ideal place to not just mine these materials, but stand up a robust industry. And as we all know, this has very real national security implications in addition to all the energy implications. So we would love to work with federal stakeholders. And again, we've talked about it already, a lot of these minerals are located on federal land. So we're going to have to work in partnership to build a new industry from the production of rare earths and critical minerals. Moving on to hydrogen, very grateful again for the announcement today. We're ramping up our hydrogen program here. Thank you so much to the Department of Energy. And we do see Wyoming as a potential headwater state. We look forward to focusing on how we can bring down the cost of hydrogen, and do novel work around things like subsurface hydrogen storage and what needs to be done to develop markets and then get the hydrogen produced in Wyoming to those markets across the country and beyond. Moving on, nuclear is a great opportunity for Wyoming. It fits well with our existing workforce and resources. And Wyoming has long been a producer of uranium, and we look forward to the day when we can ramp up uranium production in the state again. Very exciting announcements already been mentioned between TerraPower and Rocky Mountain Power. Grateful to be engaged with those groups as they move forward on their project. But nuclear in Wyoming isn't only about one plant. Again, just like rare earths and critical minerals and everything else I'm talking about, these are all about building new industries. So the state of Wyoming is now considering supporting a $2 million pool of funds to build capacity across the state at UW and the community colleges to develop new programming, education, worker retraining, and we hope that we can find federal support. And Dr. Murrell already mentioned the Vision for a Future Act that was released, I think, this morning by Senator Manchin and Barrasso. So really excited about that and to see what opportunities are there. We're also grateful Idaho National Lab has been working with the School of Energy Resources, with the Wyoming Energy Authority, and other stakeholders across the state as we try to plot a path for nuclear development in Wyoming. And again, it's all about developing that industry. I do want to call attention to one area where there is a lot of promise for Wyoming, and that would be responsibly sourced gas. This is an area where I think that we should make sure we're paying attention to Wyoming natural gas producers, who are largely 90% of Wyoming's natural gas is on federal lands. We have some of the lowest greenhouse gas footprint natural gas in the country being produced here in Wyoming. Just a few weeks ago, we all learned that Jonah Energy received the nation's first UN Gold standard for upstream emissions. They've been working with Project Canary and other producers to over many years to develop responsibly sourced gas. And I think we need to understand that banning production or even moratoriums on federal lands can halt some of the lowest greenhouse gas footprint fuels in the country. And so we look forward to working with federal stakeholders to make sure that our producers that are leading the way are rewarded for that effort, and that we hopefully will see drilling rigs coming back to Wyoming and producing some of the lowest lowest greenhouse gas footprint oil and gas in the country. The pace of energy change has been dramatic and faster than expected, and so we are going to need collaboration, and we're grateful for this call and all the research support over the years and the collaboration on federal lands. We don't have many people, so we do need help and assistance, and I want you all to know that the School of Energy Resources stands ready to help develop new industries in the state that are energy focused. So thank you all so much for your time. Glad to be here.
Dr. Dale.
Good morning, everyone. Always a tough act to follow when we hear Holly talk because she just is so knowledgeable. Thank you for your time this morning. I wanted to just take a few minutes to share with everybody a little bit about our community colleges here in Wyoming and some specifics related to Western Wyoming Community College. First off, our college here, Western, is our primary campus is located here in Rock Springs, but we also have 10 outreach centers in 5 of our counties in Southwest Wyoming. So we represent Uinta, Lincoln, Carbon, Sublette, and Sweetwater counties. So basically from Evanston over to Rawlins and up to the Teton County line. So we are serving 29,000 square miles here in Wyoming. And of course, it's a very rural area. And at Western, we serve about roughly 4,000 students every year, and 65% of those students are part-time. And what that tells you is many of them are workers. Many of them are workers as in adult learners, and they are providing for families, and they're looking for flexible learning options and and many of them are homebound. So it's not where they can have access to a variety of options. They're looking for what they can get in their communities, and that's why we're called the community colleges. That is what we do, and that is what we do well. So let me talk a little bit about the community colleges in Wyoming in general. We have 8 community colleges now. Welcome to Gillette College in Campbell County. They're getting their feet on the ground and getting up and running as soon as possible. Collectively, the community colleges in Wyoming serve over 26,000 students every year. So large impact, and a large impact on how we can influence the workforce. And trust me, we're going to need all of that impact and influence to meet the needs that we have ahead of us. We collaborate very well together. We do have a commission that sort of is our orchestra conductor here in the state. Different states are organized differently, but we are all locally controlled, and we have local boards, and we work very, very closely with all of the communities in our service area. So the other thing about our community colleges here in Wyoming, they are called comprehensive community colleges. Not all states have those. And what that means is we're the one stop for a variety of learning opportunities. And one of the first things, well, let me back up and talk just first about the 3 basic pillars regarding community colleges. And the first is access, meaning these were why community colleges were developed, to provide access to higher education in communities when folks couldn't go somewhere. Also, don't have to have a certain admissions requirement to get to the community college. We meet students wherever they're at with whatever their learning needs are. And then another pillar is success. Obviously, we want to help students succeed and complete their education and ultimately get good paying jobs. And then, of course, workforce development. It's absolutely a core outcome for all of the community college within the nation. So when you talk about a comprehensive community college, it means that we do a variety of things. First of all, we train students, we prepare students to transfer to universities for 4-6 years and beyond career pathways, academic and career pathways. So that could be a STEM pathway. We have actually collectively, all of the community colleges, Wyoming, about 3/4 of our students transfer to UW. So we have tremendous relationships with the university. And our students do very well when they transfer. So transfer education is one of our outcomes. And of course, career and technical education, CTE, if you've heard that acronym. And those are what, I really don't like using this word, but they're terminal degrees because I don't think education should ever be terminal. But what really it means is that those are the 1-year certificates and the 2-year degrees, but also we're looking at adding more what we call stackable or short-term credentials to get more graduates into the workforce faster, and then have seamless pathways so that they can continue on with their education and their training. And then we do a lot of developmental studies, which is remedial education, which is going to be an interesting challenge for the community colleges as we work through the COVID crisis, and students who may not have gotten exactly all of the learning outcomes that they needed during that time. So that's going to be a bigger, heavy lift for the community colleges. And then maybe something that's not really well known for everybody, but we do a lot of continuing education. So that's non-credit training. That is customized for whatever industry needs, and we can do it quickly. And we have access to training opportunities for any worker, really, whether they are displaced or if they're in the workforce and they need some extended skills. So that's really what that's really the big picture of community colleges. Really, of course, we're in it for an educated citizenry, but we're ultimately all in it to help people get good paying jobs. And we're all really focused on what's called H3 outcomes, high wage, high skill, high demand. And we have a lot of opportunity in Wyoming, not only with our coal industry, but other industries as well that are ancillary, and a lot of the industries that Holly was talking about earlier. And then, of course, an outcome for the community college in each community is going to be related to economic and community development. So we partner with our industries very closely. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But that's really a big part of what we do here in the community colleges. So let me move on to talk specifically about the energy sector workforce development and preparing students for this field, all of these fields of study. As I've talked about earlier, we have transfer opportunities where we work closely with the university to get students in that pipeline for bachelor's degrees and beyond, master's and PhDs. We have credit programs here at Western, and Western is really and has been very, very well known for its career and technical education programs that support the energy sector, oil and gas, and of course, coal and other plant operations here. We have a very robust trona industry down here in this part of the state. So just giving you a couple of quick examples of what we call our manufacturing and industrial technology programs. We cleared it. We are allowed to call it, we are the MIT of Wyoming. Just kidding, but no, we call it that. But we have an electrical and instrumentation program that has a wait list every year, and that is a fundamental program that helps with all of those industries, but also is helping with augmenting our new power line technology program. Thank you so much to our governor for supporting the WIP project and helping us with that new utility industry here in the state. Plant operations, industrial maintenance, welding, auto and diesel. And most of our community colleges have access as well to these programs. So our challenge at Western is those programs are full because a lot of our industry partners are filling them with current workers, but there's a lot of demand. And so part of our challenge is how do we build capacity in those programs to give access to students. On the horizon, of course, nuclear energy, and how do we partner with business and industry and TerraPower and Rocky Mountain Power to expand this programming and what exactly is needed, and working obviously very closely with SER. And then automated manufacturing is a program that's that we're looking at. We have a medium-sized oil and gas company that's pivoting right now here in Sweetwater County that is looking at expanding automated manufacturing. So Western is going to be responding to that as well. I also have to tell everyone that while we're not in competition with the university related to this fall, Western will be offering its first bachelor's degree in business. And what we did is we customized that program. It's really for the CTE student who completed a 2-year degree and wants to move right into completing a business degree because they've been promoted into a supervisory role. We know that those jobs are completely different than being a mine foreman. So we're expanding that program, and it's all online so that our shift workers out there in the field have access to that. So we're really excited about that opportunity, and that actually is a best practice that is expanding in the United States right now, so that students don't lose credit and that they have access because they're homebound and they're place-bound. So regarding those non-credit programs, just a couple of examples. We do a ton of MSHA training, which is mine safety. Of course, all of the OSHA safety courses, emergency personnel, all of these things that are support positions in our plants. And sometimes we don't think about all of those support training opportunities that are necessary related to hazardous materials and et cetera. So we do that, and we customize those, and they're oftentimes on demand, and they're just quick training. Maybe it takes a week, maybe it takes a day, et cetera. And then we have very, very strong business and industry relationships and partnerships because that's what we do. We have to have curriculum that is relevant for our employers. And so we are constantly meeting with business and industry, and we have regular advisory committee meetings, and we partner to do internships and apprenticeships, and of course we want to get jobs for our graduates. And then we also look for business and industry to help advocate for the community colleges, because the community colleges unfortunately have taken a hit with their funding over the years. And so now we're trying to build that capacity back in order to meet the needs of these growing industries that we're seeing. And that's going to be part of the challenge. And then lastly, I just wanted to share with everybody a best practice here in Southwest Wyoming. Back in 2018, we worked with what's called the Next Gen Sector Partnership model, and we developed what's called the Southwest Wyoming Manufacturing Partnership. We're using the term manufacturing to sort of generalize a lot of the industrial employers here in Southwest Wyoming. So it's not just related to the manufacturing sector, but it includes folks from all of our plants and oil and gas. It includes, broadband communication, a variety of businesses. But we all meet and we have business champions, and we discuss every month. We have a group that gets together and we plan regional meetings, and we bring in lots and lots of employers from the 5 county regions to talk about how we're going to prepare the future workforce, and where are we going to find all of these people, and how can we create seamless pathways from K-12 to the community college, to the university if it's relevant, etc. So this Southwest Wyoming Manufacturing Partnership really has been recognized as a best practice here in Wyoming, and I'm really proud to be involved with that project, and we'll continue to do our work, and we will add new industries to those conversations and figuring those things out. Like I mentioned earlier, we're partnering with the School of Energy Resources, specifically on the core CM and rare earth minerals work that's being done here in the Green River Basin. We're excited. We've given office space to SER here on Western's campus. We're also expanding entrepreneurship opportunities with the university, so we're excited about that. And then I would say when we're looking at challenges as community colleges, I think it's fair for me to speak for all of them here in Wyoming, that it's going to take a village. And here we are all together. We are the village, and we are going to have to help prepare our graduating students to take these good paying jobs. And how do we do that? And how do we ensure that it's relevant and accessible and affordable? And so that's part of the challenge. Developing and recruiting our talent pipeline is going to be one of the biggest hurdles, but Western is here to help. We're excited, and we absolutely love working with business and industry, and we look forward to working with the federal government as well. We have great relationships with our state partners, and I thank you very much. I've crammed a lot in just a few minutes, but I'd like to turn it over to Shofei Shermer, who is the Regional Director of Utility Workers Union of America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Dale. I really appreciate that introduction. And of course, as a member of or a community member here in Rock Springs and Sweetwater County, I'm very excited about all of the opportunities that Western presents for our community members. I'm honored to be able to participate in this panel here today. And just a bit of brief background about myself. I am a national representative for the Utility Workers Union of America, which represents approximately 50,000 members across the nation in all sorts of utility industries, including electric generation and distribution, natural gas distribution, as well as water quality systems, and other municipal groups as well. I'm also on the board for the Wyoming State AFL-CIO, which represents 10,000 workers who are union members across the state of Wyoming. And I'm proud of my participation in that work as well. Those union workers do cover a myriad of industries. I've also spent several years in the past as treasurer of Local 127 of Utility Workers Union of America here in Wyoming. That local covers 3 power plants in Wyoming and a host of distribution sites, actually transmitting and distributing the power to all of the point sources where we access electricity in our daily lives. And most importantly, I'm proud to say that I am a Wyoming coal worker, and I'm a proud second-generation utility worker. Both of my parents retired from the Jim Bridger power plant, and my brother is actually still employed there today. While I worked in logistics, water quality, and as an auxiliary operator at both the Jim Bridger power plant outside of Rock Springs here and at the Dave Johnston power plant outside of Glen Rock, Wyoming in the past, I know my current position doesn't involve handling the coal or operating power plant equipment like it used to, but being a Wyoming coal worker and a utility worker is still very much central to my core identity. And I would say that that's true of coal workers across the state of Wyoming. It's a sense of pride and a sense of identity that really becomes part of who you are. And when faced with the possibility of either dwindling or transitioning away from coal, that leaves a lot of uncertainty when it's something that is core to your identity. I do hope to present some points on behalf of workers and specifically coal workers in Wyoming today, but I won't pretend to speak on behalf of all of them. I just want to challenge this group to take some ideas and I guess take some questions back to their local communities to see how those questions can be answered specifically in those communities and how we can provide solutions to the questions. As Mr. Luthi mentioned in the opening comments, every coal job in Wyoming expands into creating 2 additional jobs here in Wyoming. So that's a total of 15,000 jobs that the coal industry supports, and that's no small number. When you take that in comparison to our very small population across the entire state as the smallest state in the nation, you see that coal industry is a much larger proportion of industry and workers than probably we've seen in other parts of the country. And that's important to remember. It's also important to remember that each worker in each community is going to have a different perspective. So while I am thankful for IWG's work in bringing this workshop here today, I do look forward to opportunities to have similar type of discussions and hopefully town hall meetings, both for hearing workers' voices and providing direct assistance and information to workers at the local community level in hopefully town hall meetings in the coming year. As Dr. Dale mentioned, the importance of access to community colleges is something that our community colleges have worked to improve in all sorts of ways. And I know that our community colleges do work to make that accessible with evening classes and non-traditional schedules. But I would also challenge the thought that the design of our coal jobs, because they are 24/7 in-demand jobs, many of our workers don't work a traditional Monday through Friday 8-hour shift. Many of our workers end up working 10 or 12-hour rotating shifts, alternating on a different basis between day shifts, graveyards, swing shifts. And so with that kind of rotation, it makes it very difficult for a set schedule for school to fit into that. Online classes do offer some options to fit into that. But when you add in the labor-intensive type of work that our coal workers do, the alternating schedules, and then family responsibilities on top of that, it's easy to see how challenging trying to possibly retrain for a new job while currently working in the coal industry really can be. Of course, safety needs to be a top priority, so there's very little wiggle room to try and push for more capacity on somebody's time while they're working this type of job. And I would also like to challenge this group, as you go back to your communities, to reframe how we look at, I guess, the priorities in this entire discussion. As Mr. Anderson mentioned in his opening comments, he highlighted 4 key points that the IWG is focusing on for investment opportunities. They were infrastructure, environmental cleanup opportunities, entrepreneurship and new industry opportunities, and then workforce development. I would ask that the group reframe this whole paradigm, and instead of thinking of workforce development as the last item, I would ask you to think of it as the first item to focus on, because it is the most direct impact to our tax base, to our communities, to the very people who live, work, and recreate in Wyoming. It's literally workers that make Wyoming what it is. If we leave workers as the last thought on our list of priorities, then we run the risk of losing those workers. And after workers have left the state, investing in infrastructure, environmental cleanup, and entrepreneurship all become much more expensive if you have to bring in outside workers temporarily, and also lower priority and less beneficial. If you don't have the same thriving communities that we see today in Wyoming, these other aspects really fall to the wayside in many ways. I look forward to the additional information that will be shared, and I again thank the IWG for this opportunity. And I really just do hope that the members of this group today will keep in mind that our state is left to fund our transition opportunities, as we see that the federal legislation, utility workers have been asking for full wage support for transitioning coal workers after they leave the coal industry, to be able to retrain before they start a new career. Because again, that dual training and working is very difficult in this industry. So I would just ask our state to try to be creative, and I look forward to the solutions that we might be able to come up with. And with that, I would like to introduce Campbell County Commissioner Rusty Bell.
Great. Thank you all. I really appreciate the IWG giving us time to put Wyoming on the stage and tell our story. And so a lot of the things that you've heard earlier about coal, and from whether it was from the governor, from Randall Luthi, or from Dr. Krutka or Dr. Morell, really what that comes down to is Campbell County. The vast majority of the coal that comes out of Wyoming comes out of Campbell County. Campbell County actually was started as really grew in the 80s and 90s from a small town, from a small agriculture town to a coal town, and now we're kind of unique as a coal community. And the reason we're unique is because we've grown to about 50,000 countywide. Unlike a lot of other communities, coal-reliant communities, Campbell County doesn't just have one power plant and one mine mouth operation. So if in those smaller communities, they really see an impact when that coal power plant is going to go down or is scheduled to decommission, then that mine mouth, all of those jobs are impacted. The reason that Campbell County is different is because we actually ship coal, thermal coal, to 27 states in the country. At one point, Campbell County was actually 18% of all the BTUs in the whole country were coming from Campbell County alone. That number has, over the past 10 years, has really decreased, and now we're only 10% of the BTUs in the country. But that still means that Campbell County alone is providing around 40 to 50 million people and businesses with their coal or with their energy. So when we talk about coal-reliant communities, Campbell County really should be at the top of the list of those. So what has Campbell County done? Campbell County has decided that we had a group, really a community-led effort to come up with a Carbon Valley initiative and say that we actually want to use our resource, not just our resource, but the state's resource, and actually all the United States citizens' resource. Most of the coal here is actually owned by the federal government. And so we decided that we wanted to be open to everything carbon, and we're not going to shy away from. We understand that CO2 is an issue. We understand where the markets are going. not only in the decline of thermal coal, but also to combat the CO2 issue. And so we wanted to be open to all those conversations. So what's happening in Campbell County right now? Right now we're actually home to 12 open pit coal mines. We're home to 4 coal-fired power plants. I think the first decommissioning power plant is scheduled in the mid to late 2030s in Campbell County. But we're home to the Integrated Test Center that you heard a little bit about from Dr. Krutka. We're actually home to the Carbon Safe Project, which is studying the storage of CO2. We're home to Atlas Carbon that takes a few tons of low-cost coal and makes 1 ton of expensive or higher value activated carbon. We're actually home now to the Wyoming Innovation Center, thanks to state efforts, a county-wide effort, and then also an effort by EDA. We're successful in that. That's a good partnership. That's going to open up early next year to pre-commercialize carbon products. We're also home to, or at least have the Denbury CO2 pipeline that runs diagonally through our county. So we have done a lot of things, or a lot of things are happening in our community that really aren't happening in the same place anywhere else in the country. So it's exciting, but what are the challenges with that? Well, in a sense, Campbell County has some time. I truly believe that the last ton of thermal coal that's ever burned in the United States probably will come from the Powder River Basin. That being said, we're really not sure when that's going to be. So one of the challenges for us is the timing on this and making sure that there's investment in our community to use the resource we have and find ways to continue to use that resource in an added value way, and not knowing what that timing is. It would help for us if the United States had an overall energy policy that would lay out some time commitments that we're going to use fossil energy for. That would help probably all coal reliant communities. A couple of the other things that we see challenges in are really an investment, a real investment from the private sector and the federal government in coal products, in CCUS, and in that infrastructure. Really, Campbell County sets itself apart that we're really close to, as a big vision for our area, we're really close to being, if you take the Carbon Product Center, the Integrated Test Center, the Carbon Safe Project, the Denbury Pipeline, I mean, we're really close to being able to offer CO2 actually as a service. Simply saying, Company X, if you want to come here, not only can we take your garbage and your sewer and provide you water and power, but we could also take your CO2 and either put that in a pipeline, store it, or maybe use it for enhanced oil recovery or something like that. So, so we're with investment, Campbell County can really set itself apart from the rest of the country, probably the rest of the world, and be an example of how that can happen. A couple of things that were mentioned earlier. We actually, as Campbell County, are not unfamiliar to EDA grants, and we're successful, like I said, with a partnership with the Wyoming Business Council and EDA to build the Wyoming Innovation Center, and some other things that we've done. But this last round of grant applications was a little confusing, like Dr. Morrell said. That one that we put in was actually the third in about 6 weeks that we had not received. And so that was a little bit confusing for us too. And I think one of the things that would help with that would be really lay out those parameters on what is going to be scored higher. And the reason I say that is because I think that looking through all those grant applications, and I've not seen a stronger one ever put out by Campbell County that really lays out the foundation for private-public partnership for a long time in coal products and coal processing. But our community is not underserved, and our community is not disadvantaged right now. We're actually trying to be proactive in not making that happen. And so I think that, you know, setting aside some dollars to make sure that that doesn't happen will actually save the country in the long term. And then the other thing I think that is really important that we'd like to see some investment in would be the rare earth elements and critical minerals. We are actually taking part in a phase 1 of a core CM project. And so hopefully we can see some continued support for that effort. And like Dr. Krutka said, that really is a national security issue that we think Wyoming can really be at the forefront of helping solve. So going forward, I think we're really excited to see a federal field staff here really get to tell our story, come here and talk to you about and show you what we have. And I apologize that I'm gonna go ahead and answer any questions. I see that we're late on time, and so I'm gonna turn it over now to my commissioner to the south, Jim Willix, and I'll take questions if anybody has any. Thank you.
Thank you, Rusty. Appreciate it. Yeah, Jim Willix. I'm a commissioner in Converse County, and we're just south of Campbell County. Appreciate this opportunity to visit with everybody this morning. You know, I think Rusty set the stage really nice to know that coal-impacted communities in Wyoming really fall kind of into 2 categories. Those that produce coal, and that really is Campbell County and the home of all those mines. And then you have got those surrounding communities. Commerce County does not produce much coal, but we send a bunch of workers, both in the railroad and in the coal mines. That's where it is. Our coal mine straddles the county line. If the shovel digs north, Campbell County gets the tax revenue. If the shovel turns south, it gets to Converse County. It was mentioned earlier about the kind of work schedule workers have. I have a parking lot right behind my office. Coal miners get on the bus at 4:30 in the morning, and they return at 8:30 that night, or they leave at 4:30 at night and return at 8:30 that next morning as they commute to their job. And so that is a new and or a challenging job to fit into that retraining. It was pointing out, how do you find time to make do that while they're still actively working? You know, the thing about transition about coal that is really challenging is as we transition away from it, coal miners had to live where they work. And that is because of the resources here. But as our society changes, people don't always have to live where they work, or at least maybe the spouse doesn't. They can remote work. And so one of the things that a lot of our communities are discussing is livability and providing those things that, if you will, millennials or the next generation are looking for when they go someplace to live and work. And so one of the challenges that our communities face as we transition is, you know, we used to be live and work, and now we need to make sure that we provide those, if you will, recreational, social amenities that many people are looking for. And in a state with low population, that doesn't always attract everybody. So some of the things that we've talked about as communities is, again, expanding those livability questions that will help attract people. Also, as we transition away from coal, and this administration has put a lot of emphasis on renewables, and as you've heard before, we've bought into that. There's a lot of wind farms in Converse County and in Wyoming. But the challenge with those is there is a ton of labor during construction, but the operation of wind farms is a lower operation, a lower number of employees. You see that same in solar. And so that challenge is it's great in the short term, but how do we make sure we have workers that live and work in our communities that are vested in the Rotary clubs and the Chamber of Commerce's and the school booster clubs and aren't transient, that come in for construction and then leave? And so that's one of the things that we are looking at and need some understanding of the best ways to make livability enhancements to attract those other workers that have choices. If you're a coal miner, you didn't have a choice. But if you're working remotely now, you have choices, and we want to make sure Commerce County and Wyoming provide those opportunities. You know, the other thing that I think that the diversity of what Wyoming has, you know, just in Commerce County, we have wind, uranium, oil and gas, coal bed methane, We have the Dave Johnson power plant. There's solar opportunities. There's hydrogen opportunities. But again, transitioning towards them is the challenge. You know, uranium, I think, as we talk about this net zero goal, uranium has to play a big part of that. And we know more about the Natrium plant, and I know that's coming up later. But we have one of the biggest uranium deposits in the United States just north of Glen Rock, and it's in shutdown mode. They are just barely maintaining operations just to stay viable. And we also do not have uranium enrichment in the United States. So let's just think big for a minute to think about an idea that could help Wyoming and help the net zero. Dave Johnson Power Plant has 4 units, and they're all set for shutdown over various times. Units 1 and 2 are the oldest. What if you shut them down and put a Natrium nuclear or other nuclear plant there? You took 3 and 4, it did carbon capture, which is a proven technology, and still could burn coal and provide baseline power, which is extremely valuable. So you take units 3 and 4 and do like baseline power. Then north of Glen Rock, you start producing more uranium for these nuclear plants that are starting to be developed. And then you build a processing plant, maybe close to the uranium mine. So we're actually refining uranium in the United States instead of shipping it to Canada. A lot of it goes to Canada and comes back. And so now all of a sudden you've created permanent jobs, used a Wyoming resource, and you're reaching the net zero through uranium, carbon capture, and keeping national security issues of uranium processing in the country. If you're dreaming big, there's an idea to dream big about how could we get to that point as those jobs switch from coal to other industries. And then the last thing I would point out is we've talked a lot about schools in our area, and it was alluded there hasn't been a school in the last 20 years that hasn't been built with coal money. But schools are a barometer of what's going on in a community. And when you have permanent jobs and permanent students, it provides more stability for schools and for their hiring and for their programs. Where when you have transient workers that come in for major construction projects, as generally alluded to with solar and wind, it creates a whole new set of challenges and a whole different set of resource funding. And so transitioning away from coal, we need to make sure that we have continue to have the revenue source to provide the top quality education that Wyoming has. And when, as pointed out, with 65% of the minerals federally controlled, our federal partners need to make sure that we have access to those minerals and the ability to generate the revenue needed to provide not only education, but those basic services for all of us in Wyoming. So I really look forward to continuing these conversations. I think a big push you've heard is this should not be the end of the conversation, but it's just the beginning of the conversation. The regional discussions we had earlier were very valuable. This is going to be valuable. So really looking forward to that. So I really thank you for this opportunity, and it is my pleasure to turn this over to my colleague in Lincoln County, Bob King. Bob.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate the time this morning. I really appreciate all that's been said thus far, especially the comments by Randall Luthi and my fellow commissioners. I want to tell you a little bit about Lincoln County. And Lincoln County resides on the very western part of Wyoming. We're connected to Utah and Idaho. We have a population base of 19,851 people. So we're small in population, but 77% of our county are federal lands, which brings us down to, our coal issues and the impact that the shutdown of Naughton 1, 2, and 3 will have on our county, as well as the surrounding communities, which is Kimmer and Diamondville and other communities that supply folks that work there. The coal mine, or the towns right in the local vicinity, total about 3,540 people. And the coal mine, as well as the power plant, hire a great number of people, and those workers come in from all over, not just Kimmer and Diamondville, but also Evanston, Green River, Rock Springs, Cokeville, from all over. Now, when we look at those units there, Unit 3 is the largest unit within that group. That unit was shut down in January 31st of 2019. And so coal production was greatly decreased. Later, that plant was converted to natural gas, and it's used as a peaker currently. Unit 1 and 2 use coal as well as natural gas. But that entire system, that entire plant, is due to be shut down in 2025, which, when we start looking at that will greatly affect the production of the coal mine itself. 2 years ago, the mine had an employment of about 250 employees, and currently there are 188 employees at the mine. The budget for Lincoln County annually is $19 million. With the coal mine going away, it will reduce that income by $9 million. So you can just imagine what effect that's going to have, not only on Lincoln County, but all the communities within it. Now, those are some of the effects that are going to happen, but let's talk a little bit about some of the positive things that are coming. And one of those positive things is the Advanced Nuclear Natrium Plant by TerraPower and Rocky Mountain Power. This is a very exciting time for the community. They fully support it. They want to see this thing take off and go. And when we look at what lies before us concerning that, we have to look at the impact that it will have on the community as well. When we first heard that the coal mine and power plant was going to be shut down, we formed, excuse me, we formed a diversification committee. That would included several people within the communities as well as the county, to look at how we can diversify our income, how we can diversify industry within our county and within the area. As we did that, we looked at some funding so we could produce a study. We received funding from the Wyoming Business Council, from Rocky Mountain Power themselves, from the city, and certainly from the county. Part of that is we went out and we hired a consultant that would take the results of that study and form an action plan and move forward with that diversification. So during that, we had several companies come to us and talk to us about what they could do with coal, and not only work with coal, but also produce zero emissions during the process. So these two companies that we're looking at right now and are looking at locations within Lincoln County are talking about producing carbon black, carbon fiber, fertilizer with coal, not to mention the extraction of rare earth minerals. So we have quite a bit that's moving forward. And what that does produce for us, though, is it puts us in a little bit of a predicament. We are a small community, we are a small county, and we do need federal help in order to organize properly, fully implement these different technologies within our community. Another location within our county that does quite well and will help us, we believe, in the future is the Opal Natural Gas Hub. It's an area where we have several interstate natural gas pipelines, and they converge right in Opal. And it has created a major trading hub, which, with all the gas sitting there, one of the things we want to explore and bring with it into our county is blue hydrogen production. We think that we're located fairly well for that sort of thing and creating a hub for that within our community. So as soon as we can get the help that we need, the technology that we need from the university and from the federal government, we feel like we can move forward with that as well. So the Diversification Committee is working quite well. We're fully anticipating getting help from our federal partners and from the state, and helping us get some diversification, more diversification within our county. I want to thank everyone that's been on today. I've learned something from all of you. Appreciate all the help that I feel like we're going to have offered to us. And I'll pass the time on to Lauren Schofield in Sweetwater County.
Good morning. Thank you so much. I'm a commissioner in Sweetwater County, and that sits along the southwestern Wyoming, and we actually are right next to Lincoln County. And so I also serve on the Wyoming State Broadband Board as a chairperson and the Southwest Wyoming Manufacturing Executive Leadership Committee that Dr. Dale talked about earlier, and also on the Sweetwater County and Economic Development Board of Directors. So Sweetwater County is expansive with 10,491 square miles and around only 42,200 citizens. And we recognize that there's a wide array of opportunities that are available throughout the state. I want to go a little bit more into depth about a few of the bigger opportunities that we have identified here specific to Sweetwater County. We do have the Jim Bridger coal-powered power plant that was scheduled to begin shutdown as well. We have 3 coal mines here in Sweetwater County, as well as oil, natural gas, trona mines, and uranium, with ongoing solar and wind opportunities. And as Commissioner Willick stated, our uranium plant is also in shutdown mode, but we have some opportunities for that as well. So I'm not saying that we're giving up on coal. However, we do have some diversification opportunities available in our county that we're looking at. Sweetwater County has the opportunity to develop an industrial park that will also provide water to a housing development as well as our regional airport. And this is the Middle Baxter Road Development Project. This development is very close to being shovel ready, and it has direct access to rail, air, and Interstate 80. It's very close to the Jim Bridger power plant and a few of our coal mines. And the biggest need that we have for this development is funding and support in regards to water line and other basic infrastructure in that area. So this development would also serve as a useful location for potential in uranium refining, potential for Bitcoin and blockchain locations. We do have opportunities to build out extensive power that would meet those needs, as well as an industrial development to support our other local industries. And that could be wind turbines, solar panels, and many other areas of manufacturing and refining. As you heard earlier from Holly about the Rock Springs Uplift, I'm not going to go into any technical detail, but that's a monumental opportunity that we have here in Sweetwater County for a CO2 hub. We also just really learned as digging into this project, and that however, as much research has gone into it, there still is no current permitting process through the BLM, and there's also no leasing opportunity on federal lands for us to move forward with the opportunity. So in order for us to start looking at some of these opportunities for carbon capture, we really absolutely need the permitting processes in place, as well as the funding support to get that needed infrastructure moving forward. As I mentioned just a second ago, Bitcoin and blockchain also have some opportunities to grow here in Sweetwater County with the power that Bitcoin and blockchain require. Our Middle Baxter Road development is absolutely a great place for it. We stand poised and ready to meet those needs for any of those kind of projects to flourish in our communities. We also have a fairly extensive need for basic infrastructure development. And through the Sweetwater County Economic Development Coalition, we start looking at bringing in different businesses to our community. And really, in order to expand, we must have these basic sewer, water, infrastructure projects that are poised and waiting to be performed. At our last tally, we have about $102 million worth of those projects that would allow for some additional local growth and development and expansion outside of the current industrial needs that we have. So I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to talk about our community and what our goals and our needs are. I want to end by just a short story. So my great-grandmother, as well as my grandmother and her 5 siblings, came over to Sweetwater County from Yugoslavia. And they came here to Rock Springs, Wyoming, because of the coal mines. And they thrived and survived and built beautiful lives here in Sweetwater County. And now, generations later, my family's still here in Sweetwater County. And I'd be willing to bet that across the state of Wyoming, all of us have people in our lives, and probably the majority of our communities, that have similar stories, and that one way or another, we're here in our communities because of the industry that was keyed off by coal. And we want to continue to thrive and survive in that, and not give up just because the energy is transitioning. We're willing to do what we need to do to make that transition. So I am also going to add a link that outlines our county statistics, as well as an executive summary on the Middle Baxter Road development and the opportunity for the Rock Springs Uplift. It also leads to our Sweetwater County Economic Development Coalition. So thank you very much.
Thank you to our Wyoming panel. I don't know how much, Briggs, if you could let me know how much time we want to use for Q&A.
Yeah, I think since we're running pretty far behind, I would offer that, if there is maybe one question for each panelist, or you just want to provide some concluding remarks, I feel like that's probably what we have time available for.
Okay, I think we had a pretty specific question for Dr. Dale in the chat. Dr. Dale, you mentioned industries that are growing. Could you provide a few examples?
Yes, and I was trying to be sensitive to the time as well, so that's why I answered it in the chat so that everybody could read that. Can everybody see that? I'm just trying to verify that I had clicked on all attendees, but gave a couple of examples there just on the Trona industry here. I mean, these are competing factors, right? This is good news, bad news. The good news is that maybe, in fact, we're turning the corner from the coronavirus, and so that industry is looking to expand, as well as what's going on up in LaBarge with Exxon. We are also looking forward already. Conversations are starting about the nuclear plants, and I say plants in plural because this is going to be a statewide effort. Kemmerer obviously was the first one chosen, but this will be again, it takes a village to train people for these jobs. And so we're in the process of figuring out what those jobs are, and working with the School of Energy Resources as well regarding that. I listed power line technology. Evanston is looking to expand in the manufacturing sector. We've recently learned, this is something as I continue to learn about the nuclear industry, is that the cybersecurity career pathway is going to be absolutely critical. I'm already having conversations with the College of Eastern Idaho, who's been working with the Idaho National Lab, and they've been willing to share their cybersecurity curriculum with us so that we can begin to train folks for those jobs. And Commissioner Shainfeld, she mentioned a couple of other things related to uranium and BitChain and that blockchain and the power that's associated with that and what's necessary and how that would be a good fit. And then I guess I would just say a couple other things. Our plant operations program at Western is the one that's just, we keep having employers asking more and more about getting more and more folks trained in that area, because we have obviously the Simplot plant and our whole service area supports power plants. So that's really a large area. And then one other thing that we're looking at through this, our Economic Development Coalition here in Southwest Wyoming is glass manufacturing, because we know that glass is manufactured from trona. So I guess what I'm saying is those are just a couple of examples from this part of the state. I'm sure that there are a variety of others throughout the state, but good news, bad news, there's a lot of growth potential down here, but the question is who is going to do the jobs? And as Commissioner King talked about as well, what kind of infrastructure do we need to get into place to support this growth? Because we need housing and we need all of the support to grow. So that would be my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, President Dale. Commissioner Willocks, did you want to add to that? I know how to pronounce your last name.
So, thank you, Mary. I think the one other industry we've talked about that has potential, Wyoming, that's interesting is hydrogen, and it's been alluded to. But as an arid state, one of the challenges that we have with hydrogen is the water use necessary for it. And so I think as an arid state and however you want to judge climate change, water development in Wyoming will be key for agriculture, industry, tourism, and hydrogen development. And we didn't touch on that much in this conversation. So I just wanted to make sure we put that out there, that if we're going to go into those areas, we will need to enhance our water development and storage, which because of federal lands and federal NEPA and other things is always a challenge. So I just put that out there on the hydrogen side, that it has a lot of potential, but in an arid state, it creates a couple other challenges that we don't want to miss.
Thank you. And I had a follow-up question for Dr. Kretka. Holly, you mentioned that our emissions footprint in Wyoming is one of our benefits. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for the question, Commissioner Throne. So I think I talked about it a little bit for coal, and for coal, our relatively low emissions profile is due to both the scale of mining, the efficiency of our mining, and the inherent traits of the coal itself, being younger and close to the surface. For our oil and gas industry, the answer is different. So I'm not sure that it's quite well known, but Wyoming started regulating oil and gas emissions before any other state. So that's really important to know. This is the Wyoming footprint from oil and gas emission or oil and gas production is the result of a lot of hard work. It's a result of stringent environmental regulations that the state has worked with both through its own actions and working with federal authorities. And it's also the result of innovation. So just for example, I did mention what's happening in Western Wyoming. For example, Jonah Energy, real leader, Pure West, the leader in low upstream emissions. And they've been working with the Center for Air Quality here at the University of Wyoming, that SER also supports, to develop novel methane detection leaks. And so I think it's really important to understand that when we send rigs to Texas or somewhere else that is non-federal land, that the relative emissions profile is actually going to increase. And so there's lots of reasons, but the fundamental reason is simply because Wyoming has been very active both on the innovation side and the regulation side in ensuring that our energy production does meet the strictest environmental standards.
Thank you. There was one more comment in the chat, and I'll go to Commissioner Bell for this. You mentioned that you feel like it's hard to get assistance because your problems aren't imminent. Could you elaborate on that thought?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's harder for us to get assistance. It seems, I think when we go through the grant application process, I think one of the concerns that I've brought up with the IWG and here recently is that because we don't see we're actually sitting in an interesting place right now in Campbell County where the housing market is there's no houses on the market and everybody's hiring. yet we know that the thermal coal market is going to continue to decrease, even though we're seeing a bump. And so we're trying to be more proactive with a community that seems to be kind of thriving right now. And so, I think it's just an optics thing. And I guess for us, the added value part of that, saying we see, having somebody here on the ground, and I think that's something I've talked to them about, is, maybe having a management and incident management or impact manager here that can relate to what we're seeing and what we're maybe going to see in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, that can help us say, okay, here's the best way to go about that. But because, I'm hearing that because we're not underserved right now or disadvantaged right now, we don't score well on a grant application when we're competing against the rest of the country that might have a different population than we do. So I think that's where I was going with that. Certainly would hope to have a lot more conversation on that part of it and how we can continue to be proactive, so that we're not in a position in that unknown time frame where we're looking for some immediate assistance. Right now, we're really trying to be proactive to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for some positivity in the long past when I'm going to be here. I hope that makes sense.
It did.
Okay.
Thank you. We're approaching 11 o'clock, which puts us about 15 minutes behind. And I know we want to hear from the federal partners. So perhaps, Briggs, you should take over.
Thank you, Commissioner Throne, and thank you to all of our panelists from Wyoming. Really appreciate those insights. Thanks so much. Why don't we, as you said, we've been doing this for about 2 hours. Why doesn't everybody stand up, get a little blood flowing? If you need to refresh your coffee, use the restroom, but hurry back because we will have the Department of Energy leading off our next federal panel, which I know is the most requested federal agency. So certainly relevant to what we've been hearing this morning. So do that. Meanwhile, could we put our next poll up? And while folks are taking a breather, there we go. All right, so optional poll here. And as soon as this is over, we'll jump right back in and kick off our panel. Question 3, which agency is your organization most likely to submit an application to in the coming year? Agriculture, energy, interior, labor, EDA, EPA, or any of the other federal agencies. So let's just keep the poll up, and why don't we transition into our federal panel? We have a number of distinguished senior officials and regional representatives. Getting us started from the Department of Energy, we have Jeremiah Bauman and Kate Gordon. From EDA, we have Angie Martinez and Aaron Pratt. From EPA, we have Danny Heffernan. From USDA, we have Scott Sutherland. From Department of Interior, we have Bart Stevens. And then for DOL, we have Frank Splukta. So with that, why don't we go ahead and, Jeremiah, if you'd like to take the stage as it were, and hopefully folks have had a chance to interact with the poll, but we don't need to wait for that. Why don't we just give you the floor and you can go ahead and get started.
Great. Thank you, Briggs. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Thank you.
Excellent. I am noticing that the share screen button is no longer an option for me. So I may need somebody else to share my slides. But I'll introduce myself in the meantime. Hi, everybody. My name is Jeremiah Bauman. I am Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm's Deputy Chief of Staff. By way of background, I've worked on energy policy for about 15 years, starting in the Northwest, more in the kind of Bonneville service territory than quite getting into Wyoming. But it's a real pleasure to be here with everybody. For personal reasons, I am a native of Billings, Montana, and I'm headed home there on Monday for the holidays. But even closer to home, my mom's family all comes from Sheridan. and I've been there since about the 1880s. So I consider myself a native son of Wyoming's Powder River Basin country, just over the hill from, I know, many of the biggest and most productive coal mines in the country. So I appreciate the chance to be here with everybody, and I appreciate the complicated space that Wyoming finds itself in, with both the direction of coal for certain uses, but also the opportunities for so many new energy technologies that are also evolving rapidly. It looks like I should be able to share now, so I'm trying to do that. All right, can people see that okay?
Yeah, you'll just want to go to the full screen mode. There.
Oh, great, thank you. Let's see.
Go to slideshow, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Where? There we go. Is that working?
Looks good.
All right. So I'm going to focus on an overview of the provisions of the new bipartisan infrastructure law signed into law by the president, I guess a little over a month ago now. This is just the programs that are funded in that law for the Department of Energy. So for sure, a lot of the other critical investments that Wyoming is looking at will be in other components in terms of other infrastructure, water infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, will be in other components and other departments, portions of the new infrastructure law. I'm focusing just on the energy ones directly. And I'll just walk through the basic categories of investment in a variety of energy infrastructure and how they play out in the bill. So the first big category here is revitalizing domestic supply chains and America's manufacturing leadership. And it really does focus on a pretty broad range in the bill overall of technologies that it's in the strategic interests of the country to boost our domestic manufacturing, so we don't find ourselves in a situation like we do with so many other products today where we're dependent on foreign suppliers. But of course, within DOE's purview, we're especially focused on the technologies that are going to be critical for the energy future that our country is moving towards. One of the biggest focuses in this section is the full supply chain for batteries. And batteries of a variety of kinds, both for electric vehicles, for supporting the grid, whether that's helping expand our transmission capacity and support both more variable energy, but also just stretch the lives and the energy services offered by a full range of energy technologies. So it's both a variety of uses of batteries, but I really want to emphasize that it is the full supply chain going all the way upstream to critical minerals and rare earth elements, which I know a couple of our speakers touched on as an important opportunity for Wyoming. And it's one that the department's very excited about and excited to already partnering on with folks in Wyoming through the Core CM program and other programs. So that is critical minerals and all the way down the supply chain to the batteries themselves, investing in the production and other aspects. For example, a lot of folks are looking at how to get critical minerals and rare earth elements out of products at the end of their lives, so they don't end up in landfills, but can actually get recycled into the economy. I know Wyoming's got a variety of strategies for actually extracting those minerals. They're going to be so critical very soon. I know hydrogen and carbon capture are two of the biggest energy technologies that the folks around Wyoming are focused on. The bill invests big in those areas. On the manufacturing side, there's $1.5 billion for clean hydrogen manufacturing, as well as advanced recycling R&D in this space, as well as a pretty open-ended $750 million grant program to support a variety of advanced energy technologies and manufacturing to support those projects, specifically in coal communities. You'll see throughout this that the President's work, including the work of this interagency working group and the forums that I know people here have already been a part of in the last 8 or 9 months since we started the interagency working group, have shaped this bill. And so there are specific programs to try to set up the communities looking at energy transition, like those in Wyoming, to make sure that some of these new manufacturing opportunities are specifically tailored to the communities that are looking for to replace those high-wage jobs that also generate local revenue. And then there's also expansion of the authority for our own loan program office, which can commit low interest loans to help invest in getting manufacturing facilities going. I know our excellent speaker talking about the critical importance of community colleges and workforce development highlighted this, and workforce development is definitely a major component of the infrastructure law. It's both through direct investment in the workforce development, the kinds of job training, skills development, and classroom training that are part of the transition. But it's also through making sure that we are creating jobs so that people are actually seeing jobs at the end of the training program. And making sure that the jobs are actually going to be high quality jobs that pay prevailing wages, that have similar workplace quality and job quality to a lot of coal and and gas and other fossil fuel industry workers have today. There's also a multi-agency energy jobs council to basically watchdog implementation of these issues across the many programs in the bill. Another big category here is expanding access to energy efficiency and other clean energy technologies. I think of these as the kinds of jobs that are often good opportunities to create jobs in virtually every community. Like some of the renewable energy technologies, some of the weatherization and energy efficiency jobs will tend to be shorter term construction type jobs. But one difference is that because a lot of this work is focused on rehabbing both a wide variety of residential housing, of which in most states there's a lot of stock in need of upgrade. So that these aren't sort of jobs that are one and done and gone, but rather ongoing construction and construction industry type jobs, but also some commercial type construction, rehabbing schools, rehabbing public buildings. So you see that in these first two programs here. Folks in Wyoming, especially at the county level, I imagine, are used to weatherization assistance program dollars that already come through the state channels. Those will be increased by a substantial amount over the course of the next 8 years or so. And then that $500 million for a specific program to provide cleaner schools, meaning lower emissions, HVAC, higher efficiency windows and building envelope. And then for the state to invest in a variety of energy efficiency and clean energy technologies, $550 million for that energy efficiency and conservation block grant program, and $500 million for the state energy program that go to fund a variety of programs developed really bottom up by the state and stakeholders in the state for where you all want to focus on priority projects. Another big focus for the bill is on delivering reliable, clean, and affordable power. So both investing in the electrical grid and maintaining the existing fleet of zero carbon generating units that we've got. So on the grid side, which we see as critical for a number of needs, first of all, as extreme weather patterns change and we see more and more outages due to different kinds of extreme weather all over the country, from wildfire to hurricane to deep winter freezes in states that aren't used to such extreme cold. There's a big need to invest in the grid to reduce blackouts and increase that resilience and reliability. But there's also going to be a big need to just move the cleanest, most affordable source of power to the places that need the services offered by that power. I think a lot of times this kind of grid investment is seen as something to specifically help get the states with the biggest wind and solar potential, which I know Wyoming is one, and deliver that power to states with bigger population centers. But I would argue it's not just for those technologies, but also for the states that get ahead, like Wyoming is looking to, on carbon capture and sequestration tied to fossil generating facilities, as well as on nuclear, advanced nuclear. That TerraPower investment could be useful to provide 24/7 zero carbon energy outside Wyoming. I think there'll be a lot of needs for additional transmission investment to move that power to the places where it's needed when it's needed. So you can see there's a variety of specific pots of money for that here. That first $11 billion is really for a mixture. Some of it is carved out for states and tribes, some of it for a broader set of stakeholders, including utilities, focused on resilience planning. That can also include a lot of different resilience approaches, whether that's protecting and hardening against severe weather, protecting against cyber security threats, but also making for grids that are just inherently more resilient. So for example, expanding the use of microgrids, distributed energy technologies, so community solar paired with batteries, that can keep blackouts from being as widespread when there are problems. The second category there, the 2.5 billion, is for the kind of interregional and larger scale transmission expansion programs. And that $3 billion program is for sort of the next generation grid investment, the smart grid tools that really sort of maximize the region's ability to share resources that are offering the best value, whether that's carbon capture or hydrogen or renewables or storage. The last category on this slide then is maintaining those existing assets. So that first program is a program to keep existing nuclear plants from retiring at the same time that we're investing in advanced new nuclear technologies like the TerraPower project. And then similarly for hydropower, investment to keep existing hydropower facilities from retiring, and in some cases to upgrade their technology so they're better capable of handling the faster changes we're seeing in hydrology as weather patterns change. The next category here, and this is where we get back into a lot of the carbon capture and hydrogen opportunities, is clean energy demonstration programs. This is really taking a lot of the work that I know a set of folks in Wyoming are familiar with at the Department of Energy. A lot of the work that, for example, Holly was talking about in partnering with the Department of Energy, developing some of these new energy technologies and moving them to that sort of essentially early commercial demonstration stage. So building an actual commercial scale, quote unquote, real live facility that is showing how this technology operates at scale. So you can see a big investment here. It's both those kinds of demonstration projects and the sorts of hubs that are critical for hydrogen and carbon capture for getting the infrastructure right. So $8 billion for hydrogen, $10 billion for carbon capture, both point source carbon capture as well as direct air capture, and then also for other industrial emissions reductions beyond carbon capture as well. $2.5 billion for advanced nuclear. Some of that has already been allocated to speed up that TerraPower project in Wyoming. And then I want to especially highlight this $1 billion for demonstration projects in rural areas and $500 million for economically hard-hit communities. And I think especially in light of some of the very helpful comments that have been made, I should clarify, this isn't only defined as already economically hard-hit, but it's also defined as energy communities who would be hard-hit if some of the current energy transition trends aren't attended to in the right way and we don't create job and economic strategies for those communities. So this is for demonstration projects for these technologies, specifically in communities like those in Wyoming, and including specifically mine lands, both those that are currently operating and already retired or in remediation. So those are the highlights I wanted to just give a quick high-level overview for. Here is some content information. Amy Whitteman heads up our engagement with state and local stakeholders. She's got a regional engagement team, but that's the way you can reach out to her directly. Please do sign up to get on our notifications for some of these programs. I'll highlight in particular this Communities LEAP program is a new program that the Secretary of Energy launched this summer that aims to provide technical assistance to communities that fit either into that disadvantaged communities or energy transition communities category and help give them the technical assistance to help them be able to compete better for federal funding opportunities like the DOE opportunities I've been talking about or like some of the EDA opportunities. I will pass it, I will stop there and pass it over, I think, to my colleagues from the Economic Development Administration. But let me, before I do that, pause to see if my colleague Kate Gordon wants to add or correct anything I have said.
Certainly not correct. That was excellent as always. I just wanted to very quickly just underscore, and I think it was really clear from your presentation, but hearing the comments in the earlier panel, underscore that when we talk about energy transition, it's a really big range of energy options that we're talking about. This is renewables, of course, and efficiency, and also, as Jeremiah said, critical mine approaches, carbon capture sequestration, hydrogen, nuclear. So we really are looking at the department as a very large range, and there are investments in the infrastructure bill specifically for census tracts with closed coal plants, closed coal mines, and for current and abandoned mines for some of these investments. So it is kind of an exciting time for this whole idea of taking those really valuable assets of the existing plants and the existing mines and thinking about options for transformation of those. So just exciting moment for that and wanted to underscore those points. And I will now turn it back, I guess turn it to EDA is the next folks. Thank you, Jeremiah. That was excellent.
Well, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Just want to do a sound check. Can everybody hear me?
You can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, good morning. My name is Angie Martinez. I'm the Regional Director for the EDA Denver Regional Office. We cover 10 states in the Intermountain West and the Midwest, of course, one of which is Wyoming. I just wanted to start off this conversation. Our agency has been brought up a couple times on the call today, and don't want to leave that elephant in the room, but want to talk about the Build Back Better Regional Challenge competition briefly. I will say that I'm glad that there's not a virtual tomato throwing app on this call today. But I do just want to get in and just share that I know that many of you are disappointed that Wyoming communities were left out of the phase 1 of the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, and express that I'm also disappointed about that, as well as our team in the Denver Regional Office. I personally was very excited about some of the applications that came from the state, and the focus on strengthening what you guys already have going for you in the state, as well as pivoting to new ways to keep your economy strong. You know, I have come to realize in my job, I've been here in the Denver Regional Office for just over 5 years, and have really come to appreciate and respect the focus in the state on the coal industry. This industry has for decades fueled your economy. It has provided power to the country, as we've talked about today, and it's certainly created a really wonderful quality of life for the families and the workers in your state. You know, many of the proposals that we saw from the Build Back Better Regional Challenge really capitalized on that, on, you know, strengthening the coal industry, but also looking for ways to support other industries, ways to invest in manufacturing, to develop a rich entrepreneurship ecosystem in the state, and embracing new and changing ways to power the country, really to help you keep that competitive advantage. As we mentioned earlier, there were more than 500 applicants, and only 11% were selected. I'm not able to go into the reasons why each of the projects from the state were not selected, but I did want to share that there's a webinar going on today for all the communities across the country that did not receive a phase 1 award, to walk through those selection factors and to give some feedback on that. It is being recorded. Actually, I think it might be going on right now. So some of those colleagues might have hopped over there to listen into that, but it is being recorded, and I really hope that you guys are able to listen to that and learn from that. And certainly our office is willing to follow back up with you. In fact, I wanted to mention that our team has already proactively reached out to the applicants. I think my colleague Kirk Kaiser, who's our economic development representative for the state of Wyoming, he lives in Montana, but he has worked in both Montana and Wyoming for 7 or 8 years now with EDA. And I know prior to the pandemic, traveled to the state quite often. And he knows many of you, he knows all of the applicants who applied for the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, and has already been in contact to talk to each of the applicants about how components of their project might be able to be restructured into an application to come into our regional office. And I am certainly committed, as is our team, to really advocating for projects coming in from the state into our various programs, whether it be American Rescue Plan or other EDA programs, that we can move some investments back into the communities. You can go ahead to the next slide, please. I just want to share a little bit about some of the ways that EDA has and continues to support your strategies. This slide talks about, over the last decade, almost 50 projects that we've invested in across the state, ranging from technical assistance, disaster relief, infrastructure projects, workforce development projects, and the CARES Act gave us some dollars to invest in planning and revolving loan funds in the state, and then most recently, some ARPA dollars in the state through planning and travel and tourism. And I want to note that these programs are focused on bottom-up economic development. I think the partners, some of the partners that have already talked earlier today from the state have worked with EDA, and I think come to know that EDA takes our lead from you and from the regional partners that we work in, focusing on what your strengths are and what your regional plans and strategies are. And also all of the investments that we make in the states in our region are made at the regional level. So you work with our team, like Kirk, as well as my colleague, Aaron Pratt, who's on the call today and recently joined EDA a couple months ago, to build an application, to get feedback on the application. The application comes into our regional office. It's reviewed by a team of our regional staff, and then they make a recommendation to me that I affirm, and then those dollars are able to come into your community. So I think that's really important, that the folks on our team who are working with you day in and day out have done so for a long time and have really come to learn and understand some of the challenges and great opportunities that you face. If we can go to the next slide, I just wanted to share with you a couple investments that we have made in the state. We invested in the city of Kemmerer, and we were on that regional tour this week and had a chance to talk about the economic diversification study that we funded a couple years ago, a great website and a lot of great momentum going on with that project. Excited to see the outcomes of that. Commissioner Bell talked about the Wyoming Innovation Center, worked really closely with the community and the county and the state to get that project together, and very excited about the lab to market effort going on in Campbell County. And if you can go to the next slide, a couple more projects. We talked today about manufacturing. And several years ago, we invested in the Sheridan Economic and Educational Development Authority for a manufacturing center that you can see being built there. And then one of the first investments that we made through our Assistance Coal Communities initiative since I came to EDA to the Denver office was the Northern Wyoming Community College expansion for workforce training to invest in some equipment and supplies for that training program. You can go to the next slide. This slide outlines our new investment priorities, but what I really wanted to mention on this slide is, I could talk for a while about all of our investment priorities and all of our programs, but as I mentioned earlier, the really unique thing about EDA is that we have a team of folks on the ground who basically can serve as a consultant to you and to your communities to talk through your project, how it might best fit with EDA's funding programs, and what investment priorities your project should highlight. So you can go to the next slide as well. This is a list of our programs, and I think the whole point with this is just to share that there are multiple tools that EDA has in its toolbox to help and support a community, whatever their needs are, from, as I mentioned earlier, planning, feasibility studies, technical assistance, to construction and supporting for entrepreneurs. So again, I think the last slide has our contact information on it. I would, just really, you can go to the next slide. I would just really encourage everyone to reach out to myself my phone number and email address are there, or to Kirk Kaiser or Aaron Pratt, who's joining today and can help answer any questions you might have when we get into the Q&A section. But really, just very much looking forward to working with all of you. I definitely learned a lot in the earlier session. Like to listen more than talk, and looking forward to continuing to work with you all and hearing from you, and hopefully working with some of you to bring some great projects into EDA that we can continue to partner with you in the future. With that, I'm going to wrap up and kick it over to Danny Heffernan at EPA. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Director Martinez. Good morning. My name is Danny Heffernan. I work in property revitalization out of the Denver office of the Environmental Protection Agency. So this is EPA Region 8. So I'm a little bit to the south. Hopefully you all recognize the picture behind me. The guy in the waders there, not catching any fish on the North Platte. But I'm happy to be with you here today. Swap out the D with an P and you got EPA instead of EDA. Next slide, please. I want to start out with the fact that reusing property is nothing new. It's nothing new to folks in Wyoming, and we've actually partnered with a number of you all on the call over the past couple of decades, and delivered some really great assets into communities. Obviously, I shouldn't have put Evanston on this. A lot of you probably already know this roundhouse. A number of you have probably been to events there, weddings and such. So I don't really have to tell you what an asset a place like this is. Whereas 20, 30 years ago, the railroad properties there in Evanston were not an asset in any way, shape, or form. So I think that Commissioner Willicks talked a little bit about the livability and quality of life principles maybe a half hour ago. And I think this really speaks to it, kind of the life-giving qualities of a project like this. Of course, this isn't the only project across the state of Wyoming. We also have worked closely with Du Bois on the sawmill area, the old Yellowstone district in Casper, a number of other places as well. So sometimes it's about a specific property. Sometimes it's more of a district approach to it. Next slide, please. So why EPA? Well, because all the examples you're looking at here, they're underutilized or vacant properties, and they all probably have either some kind of a problem or something that might be a problem. And so that might be petroleum or solvents in the soils, might be asbestos and building materials, different things like that. Things that might be costly to deal with or might not. And, those things are standing in the way of some kind of reuse. And you definitely don't want to, build new housing or a daycare center or even, a new office building on top of them without figuring out what's going on there. So that's why EPA is involved. And, our job at EPA is to help take away that uncertainty and to help provide resources to figure out how to get these properties back into reuse. Next slide, please. So one thing we do is we provide grants, and I've got great news. Like you heard about from Jeremiah with DOE earlier, we also have infrastructure infusion happening right now, funding-wise. And for our program, that's roughly a quadrupling of funds over the next several years. So the timing is great in terms of tackling new projects and partnering and getting a hold of these resources. One of the things that we're really aware of and focused on here is the administrative burden, both on the competition side and getting grants written and then administering them. And so right now EPA is really looking at how do we get to different types of grant products that can get into communities, especially smaller and rural communities that have less capacity to deal with us. How do we get them resources that are going to be, the best bang for the buck? I've heard that throughout these virtual tours we've been doing, and that's something that we're focused on right now. Another thing that I heard today from Dr. Dale, which was so great, was about those flexible certification programs that are offered and, that industry really values. It may come as a shock, but at EPA, we have workforce development grants. These are environmental grants primarily for remediation and abatement, so lead and asbestos abatements, but also soils remediation and those types of projects. those are really marketable certification programs. And so looking forward to talking more with the community college and workforce investment folks in Wyoming on those. So we'll be doing some expanded grant solicitation starting in spring. So that's pretty exciting for us, and look forward to that. Luckily, I'm not just here to talk about grants into the future. So if you could go to the next slide, I'd appreciate it. Great. So this is like my, kind of bombastic slide. We've got no cost, no grant, rapid deployment assistance available to you. And it's absolutely true. So this is our direct assistance and technical assistance providers that are available now. There's no reason to wait. There's no reason to start thinking about writing a grant application next spring and kind of put things on the back burner until then. We can get experts on the ground now to focus on specific properties or to look more district-wide all along that main street, perhaps the properties, all along the county road that is near the plant, for example. And doing feasibility studies, market analysis, planning and design work, and involving the stakeholders in it. What needs to happen out here? What do we need in the future here? So that's pretty exciting. We're wrapping up a project as I speak right now with the city of Laramie on the west side of Laramie. And a lot of you folks on the call know that there's a lot of underutilized property on the west side of Laramie, and the city's taken a really good approach to looking at that and seeing what kind of asset it can be in the future. We also do real estate due diligence. So that's what is here as targeted brownfields assessments. This is called phase 1s and phase 2s, and you've probably heard these things in the real estate jargon. But this is non-grant. There's no contract between the county and EPA, for example, and there's no reporting requirement to us and such. So this is literally us using our expertise and our contracts to help get you data, get you reports that can be actionable, and figuring out what to do with a piece of property and how to move it forward. So this is a pretty powerful tool, and we do quite a bit of this type of work with communities across Wyoming. And then finally, if you're not sure about talking to me directly, talking about EPA and about maybe contamination in the ground, I get it. Those two bullets on the right side there, the first one is there's a resource center at Kansas State University. Her name is Maggie. You click on the link on there and you'll get right to her. And she works all throughout the Rocky Mountains, helping communities kind of navigate this process and different assistance providers and grant programs. So that's a tool that's available to you. But within Wyoming, you guys have a fantastic state government. Wyoming DEQ, Cindy Martinez is my primary partner over there. And the Wyoming Business Council operates a cleanup loan fund that EPA has provided to them. So that's Sherry Hughes, who we primarily work with there. So next slide. That's kind of it in a nutshell. Here's my contact information. Please do contact me with questions or to start brainstorming projects. We've got a fantastic team here in Denver, and we really enjoy working with all of you and looking forward to seeing what we can do in the future. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend Scott with USDA Rural Development. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Daddy. USDA Rural Development. I thought I'd start off by honoring the governor's request by saying what we are not. And USDA Rural Development is a lot of things. We have 37 different programs, but what we really are not is the cutting edge financing arm. That falls more into the lap, I think, of Department of Energy, various SBIR grants. We are not the technology conversion type entity. The things that we work on are primarily more on the implementation side of existing or known technologies. So that's one thing we're not. The other thing we're not is top down. We don't go into the state or communities and say, here's our programs, this is what you should be doing. We are absolutely reactive to what the state and the communities want to do. So I mentioned we have 37 different programs, and I'm a Wyoming native. I've been in economic development in Torrington, Cheyenne, Casper. Been with the largest private development company in Wyoming, and now I'm with rural development. So, we kind of all know each other. We work together well with each other. We try and make sure that our programs can mesh with what the state is trying to do. So some of the programs that we have include affordable housing. And that's not only on the single family side, but also on the multifamily side. And we have one of the few programs out there that are actually available for workforce housing. It's a loan guarantee program. There's not a grant component in it, but it is one of the few programs out there that can help to potentially address workforce housing issues that a number of the communities that we visited with mentioned. We have a wide variety of business programs. I'll be talking about a few of those. We have a wide variety of community programs for community buildings, anything from fire halls to hospitals to water projects to sewer projects. And I've cut down our 37 programs into the ones that I thought were most relevant to this and what we heard about while we were doing the community tours. So if I could have the next slide. Okay, so one of our largest areas is in loan guarantees. And again, this is more on the implementation side of the house. So after technologies are somewhat proven, it's really where we kick in. We team up with the private sector, primarily banks. And if they are looking at a project, but it's a startup or it's more risky than what they would like to undertake on their own, we provide a guarantee. Up to $25 million for our business and industry side. And we could do virtually almost every type of business loan that's out there. We made a $25 million loan to a coal mine. We've been working with hydrogen projects. We do a lot on the renewable side as well. We came up with a brand new one, and it's a mid-tier food production loan guarantee up to 40 million. And it's really designed primarily for the meat and poultry sector, but anything that is in between what the producer makes and the retail side is where this loan guarantee fits in. We also have loan guarantees and direct financing for that wide variety of community facilities. And as I said, we really do play well with others, and we've made a concerted effort to make sure that our programs are known out there, that we make them as accessible as possible. And because of that, we've increased our volume in Wyoming by over 2,000%. For the more local economic development entities and for the utility co-ops, we do have revolving loan funds available to kind of help with the more cutting edge economic development projects or different programs. We could work in concert with the revolving loan programs that EDA has. And next slide, please. On the agriculture side, we do have the value added producer grant, which is exactly what it sounds like. If you have a producer that's looking at trying to increase value to their commodity, whether it be grain or cattle or honey, whatever the case may be, if they're looking at increasing the value to that, either by packaging, processing, making it into a finished product, then this is where our value-added grant program can come in. And it's one of the few that are out there that will actually be a grant for working capital. That value added is also something we can finance with our loan guarantee program. And we've done quite a few projects like that within Wyoming as well. We have an energy efficiency grant that is made for agriculture, well, actually for any small business. So if they're looking at increasing energy efficiency, we can provide up to 25% grant, and we can provide financing on the rest of it. Now, before I go off of this one, one of the things that was mentioned were Bitcoin and doing some data mining within Wyoming. And I believe that we've just been able to get this grant and loan program that would be able to be applied to data centers and Bitcoin mining when they replace their servers, not when they buy new ones or, are starting out, but if they have existing servers, they're starting to replace them to refresh that. We may be able to help out in that regards on the financing and a grant side, which I think could be a fairly decent recruiting tool for the state of Wyoming. Next slide. So just real quick on housing, because that was mentioned on a lot of the communities that we've interacted with. We are the largest single family loan guarantee entity out there. And for all of our programs, everywhere in Wyoming is eligible with the exception of Casper and Cheyenne, hence the name Rural Development. So multifamily loans and grants, I mentioned that already a little bit. We do a lot in the realm of senior housing. We could do the housing rehab. There's some pretty serious income requirements that are tied to our housing rehab program, but we do have one. We do partner well with the other housing entities throughout the state. And, if you have a project that you're thinking about or looking at for housing, give me a call. We can visit about it and we'll get you pointed in the right direction. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so on the utility side, we work a lot with the co-ops throughout Wyoming, the electric co-ops, like Wirelec or Precor. We could do electric and telecom loans for large infrastructure build-outs. We have a wide variety of grants and loan programs for expanding rural broadband. This is going to be receiving some pretty substantial increases in funding, and there's going to be more opportunity for us to play in this arena. We do more telecom grants through our business and industry guaranteed loan program in Wyoming, I believe, than just about the rest of the nation combined. So we're very active in that front. We do have telemedicine grants for equipment and also for renewable expansion. Okay, next slide. Okay. One thing I did want to mention is I've only been with rural development for about 6 years now. The end of the Obama administration through the Trump administration and now this administration. And this intergovernmental working group is probably the largest effort and the most coordinated at the highest level that I've been involved with, trying to look at ways to help the communities out. And I know it's been mentioned before, but one of our biggest goals is to continue this conversation and see what we can't really do to help. Not cutting it off at the end of this webinar, but just using this as a stepping stone. And I know that's been mentioned before, but I just wanted to reiterate that. And the next slide has my contact information. I'm local here in Wyoming. Please feel free to give me a call about anything that I've mentioned or even other projects. Like I said, we have 37 different programs and we might be able to find something that fits for you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bart Stevens with the Department of Interior.
Bart, for some reason the audio is not working, at least on my end. Why don't we switch it up? How about we go to our next speaker and then we'll try to come back to Bart. Does that work?
That works for me.
All right, why don't we do that, Bart? Thank you, and thanks for jumping in there, Frank.
Okay, so I do not have a PowerPoint, and that's because a lot is still being determined by Congress about our short-term, medium-term future with the Build Back Better, the FY 2022 budget, and Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act reauthorization, all kind of in play with Congress right now. We know that we will have tremendous funding available, tremendously increased funding available in the near future. We have some indications about what that will emphasize, but I get ahead of myself. I'm Frank Sluka. I'm the Acting Regional Administrator for the Employment and Training Administration. Another rhymes with EPA and EDA. We are ETA. If you put the letters, take the letters out of order, we're EAT or 8. Emphasis on food. So we fund, a majority of our funding goes to state workforce agencies like the Wyoming Department of Workforce Services. Currently, through formula funding, we give WDWS approximately $9 million a year. With, as usual, a lot of strings attached. We tell them what they can do with the money, and then they respond in state workforce plans telling us what they will do with the money. They and the Wyoming Workforce Development Council determine what they're going to prioritize and emphasize. We work closely with them on that and make sure that it is well supported by the reality, the economics, the industries in the state, as well as the plans for shifting industries or expanding industries within the state. So we are, I think, a real important partner in these kinds of efforts. So we give the Wyoming Department of Workforce Solutions approximately $9 million a year in formula funding. We also have what we call discretionary funding opportunities, grants that you compete for, available, and those will be expanding. So some of the things we think will be coming soon are a number of industry sector partnership funding opportunities that WDWS or the community colleges or other community-based organizations can apply for. Of course, there's an emphasis on green jobs and environmental conservation kinds of things there. A lot of what you've been talking about today would fit in that. Some of the challenges that I've heard are great. We can develop or expand training programs, but where are we going to get the people to put into them? And that certainly is a struggle that I understand. And there is no silver bullet to that, but I'm looking forward to continuing those discussions and scouring what I've heard from other states as they've struggled with those kinds of issues and sharing what I can there. We're anticipating a huge influx of funding for expanding registered apprenticeships, and doing that in, of course, the traditional construction industries, but also in other industries. So I could easily imagine, if it makes sense, taking workers whose jobs will be phased out, getting them into apprenticeships that build on the skills they have and wouldn't take a huge training effort to upskill them while they're still employed and use that as a retention strategy, perhaps. We, like Dr. Dale's H3, we're focusing on high skill, high wage, high demand jobs. So I was thrilled to hear that woven into the comments this morning. Some of the things that we're doing, we've heard loud and clear, and this morning and in a lot of other contexts. We need to and are looking at how to streamline our grant application processes and our grants management processes. The burdens that puts on our grantees sometimes is a barrier to their success. And I hear the struggle very loudly with what if I could paraphrase some of the things I've heard, our house isn't yet on fire. How do we attract attention? How do we get the resources before the collapse of our economy rather than waiting for that to happen? My goal is, as you continue planning economic diversification, to be at the table, to be leveraging the resources to make sure you have what you need to train and attract workers to support the diversified economy. Some things on the horizon that I would love to have these conversations inform. This spring, WDWS and the Workforce Development Council will be submitting their WIOA, that's Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act state plan, where they lay out how they'll be delivering services for the next 2 years, for the next 4 years, and then 2 years from now, they'll be modifying that to adjust to whatever has changed over the time. This is, at a minimum, will involve the programs that we fund through our formula programs, our WIOA adult, dislocated worker, and youth programs, as well as the Wagner-Pizer funded employment service programs, vocational rehabilitation, adult basic education, the TANF programs, and whatever other partner programs the state of Wyoming decides to add into that plan. It's a great opportunity pulling those plans together to incorporate strategies from efforts like this, priorities from efforts like this. But again, we're very much a federal-state partnership, and I would defer to Robin Cooley on a lot of how that would happen. We also have some resources available for technical assistance and consulting kinds of work to help inform these sorts of things. So we look forward to how those might be leveraged to bring in consultants or trainers or whatever makes sense to make these things work. Having said that, if he's available, I'll turn the microphone back to Bart, if he's got his access working. Bart?
Yeah, I'm not seeing Bart on the panel here. So
Okay.
I think what we should do is see if we can just unpack a question or two here, and then let's. Oh wait, I think looks like Bart. Do we have you back? Well, while we're getting started, I think we had a good question sort of on timelines, and Jeremiah, I was wondering if maybe you could just unpack what you put in the chat a little bit I imagine across the agencies it's probably a similar case where agencies are figuring out their implementation plans. But would you just like to restate DOE's approach in terms of timelines for next steps?
Sure, absolutely. So the bipartisan infrastructure law, Congress has our program allocated across about 60 different programs. So we are taking a minute to sort out how we implement those in the most efficient way and frankly the most accessible way that'll be easiest for communities to apply for funds and be successful with. So we're basically looking across all those programs and looking at how we can get them coordinated and combined in a way that's going to work best. And we will basically be putting out timelines for when and how funding will become available under all those different opportunities in the weeks and months to come. One thing to look out for is there's a couple of acronyms in the chat. The kind of core funding announcement when there's a new opportunity to apply for funds at DOE at least is typically called an FOA, a funding opportunity announcement. So you'll see that acronym sometimes. But we're actually probably, for outside of these programs, going to start with a request for information or an RFI. The request for information is really our way to get community input on how we design these programs, how we design the funding application process to maximize your chances of success and maximize our ability to actually help you and get funding to the projects that you're looking to get going in your community. So keep an eye out for those as well. You'll see them called RFIs or requests for information. That's us asking you, how do we set this up in a way that's going to work best for your community? And then that will help us design the funding opportunity announcement that will come after that. Different programs will be probably all over the map. Some of them existing programs like weatherization or the state energy program that state and local governments are used to could move pretty quickly. And some of the new ones, like some of the hydrogen hub and carbon capture hub type situations, we're going to want to work with communities that have done the most advanced thinking on this to make sure we design the funding program the right way. So it could take a little bit longer to make sure we get those right before we launch those.
That's great. Thank you for that. And I think that's a good segue maybe for us to sort of summarize this federal panel and even for the IWG in this section this morning. Regarding the interagency working group next steps, just yesterday or Wednesday, we formally announced the rollout of a clearinghouse, which included even more funding opportunities that are either currently available or planned for the future. And clearly, the ones that are funded through the infrastructure bill will be what we'll be trying to get onto the clearinghouse next. The reality is that agencies are in a pre-decisional phase where either they're doing exactly what Jeremiah just said, issuing requests for information, scheduling listening sessions, and other ways to gather input to develop those programs, and then they will roll those out as next steps. You can sign up on the Interagency Working Group's website to receive notifications. We're sending out a regular newsletter, and we will keep the clearinghouse up to date with our agency partners' information as those details become available. I do want to flag that there are many more infrastructure bill investments that are relevant to energy communities, and there was a fact sheet that was published earlier this week that includes the Appalachian Regional Commission, EPA, Commerce through NTIA on their broadband, Interior, DOE, Transportation, USDA. So you can go to the clearinghouse, the IWG website, energycommunities.gov, to kind of keep track of all of that. And we'll try to keep you as aware as possible of next steps around implementation. Regarding the panel here, just a few highlights. We heard about those infrastructure investments, including the nuclear support and the exciting announcement around TerraPower and Kemmerer, supply chains like rare earth elements, CCUS hydrogen, as well as energy on mines and prioritizing workers, in particular union workers. And for EDA, we heard a sincere empathy for those that weren't necessarily selected for the Build Back Better regional challenge, but also a very earnest openness to talk about considering where those ideas were put to paper, how can we move those forward through other opportunities. Through EPA, we heard about reusing underutilized assets and potential $1.5 billion of brownfields money through the infrastructure bill, of which, rather than waiting until that becomes available in the springtime, you can get immediate access to TA either through the brownfields or through the for revitalization. So that's immediately available to you right now. Just reach out. We heard from Scott Sutherland at USDA that USDA through rural development has 37 programs. A lot of it is very much towards implementation as opposed to R&D or other things. And it's very much bottoms up, lots of loans and grants. All of that is on the clearinghouse, by the way, to keep track of it. And it runs the gamut from broadband, utilities, agriculture, energy efficiency, housing, facilities, and the list goes on. There's a lot there. And then we heard from Frank from the Department of Labor, and a lot of funding going to states, supporting apprenticeships, a real focus on high skill, high wage jobs. And they are interested in streamlining, and that they're looking forward to the springtime for the WIOA planning. I want to just close with some thank yous and next steps. On the thank you front, I want to thank everybody that was involved, from the governor's office to all the stakeholders that informed this event. Thank you very much for participating in the audience, and to our panelists today. And then moving forward, we have 2 breakout sessions this afternoon. The links are in the chat if you're interested, one on workers and one on carbon related opportunities. That's what you told us you were interested in, so here it is. So please do join us for really an open dialogue about how we can move those topics forward. And then please do reach out if you're interested in moving forward, if the IWG can be helpful, or any of our federal partners. We really do want to identify what are those specific next steps and action items so that today isn't the last time we have a conversation. So with that, let's formally conclude this plenary session, and we hope to see you this afternoon or in another hour after a break for the breakout sessions. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.